still have resolutions.
Yes, it does.
Good afternoon. Let's come to order. Today is Tuesday, the 28th of March. We're at the Civic Center for our end of month workshop. Please call the roll.
Mr. McLaughlin. Here. Ms. Albrecht.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Wallace. Here. Mr. Putnam.
Here. We're going to reverse our itinerary this afternoon. I'll start with miscellaneous first. We have an informational briefing about the Mexico Beach restoration and inlet bypassing. That's a study that's underway now. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Michael Browski with MRD Associates out of Destin, Florida. We were retained by the Bay County TDC and the Mexico Beach CDC in regards to conducting an update to a study that we conducted in 2008, which was a beach restoration coastal management type of study. Before I get into this, one of the things as we're going through this presentation, keeping in mind that this project that we're talking about, I think that's 7 out of the 10 projects are going to qualify for DEP funding. And matter of fact, with DEP funding is that we already have funding in place of $465,000, of which 75% of that money is going to come from the state. The other 25% would end up being a local match. So this is kind of unprecedented. This goes underneath the old rules of beach management. So this really is kind of a gift of where they're transitioning their funding. But this has been available, especially with a lot of the post-hurricane recovery monies that have been available. This has been released in the last year, but we have to get this under contract if you decide to go through with these projects, probably within about the next month. So if you don't mind, I'll start the presentation. We gave this to the CDC about a month ago, or actually about 2 weeks ago. Again, the purpose and the scope of the work, this is an update from that 2008 study. Just a few highlights of it. We looked at different alternatives to not only increase the efficiency, but the effectiveness of your dredging bypass system to address the downdrift shoreline erosion that is occurring along the beaches of Mexico Beach. And some of the implementation or recommendations that we had was increasing the mechanical dredging and actually increasing the volume that you dredge, utilizing a sand trap on the western side as a primary source of sand. Since that project was done, or that study was done, that sand trap was permitted and you have been dredging from it. Extending the discharge pipe further to the east past the pier itself in order to get that sand further away from the inlet. Construct the eastern jetty improvements. That's basically extending those that eastern jetty, and I'll get into that a little bit. And then construct a beach and dune restoration project between in terms of the DEP monuments of R132 down to about 138. That's down there by the El Governor and Toucans. That's stretch of beach. This is the project area. Again, what we're talking about, and keep in mind about the critically eroding beach is roughly about 132 down to 138. 138 is about where the park starts. And then it goes about 6,000 feet further to the west of that. When we talk about the critically eroding shoreline, that is an area that the state has designated as critically eroding that you would then be able, or at least be eligible for state funds through the erosion control program. And also that the inlet itself is also qualifies for state funds, which you have gotten funding in the past for. Just a little bit of the dredge history of the inlet itself. Actually, the city's been taking good records over about the last 6-7 years. There's really 3 main areas. There's the canal, there's the western sand trap, and there was also the outer bar. The chart on the right-hand side, one of the things, at least in last year, in 2016, that you dredged approximately about 37,000 cubic yards of material just in that last year. When we had done the study back in 2008, we looked at what was being dredged, what needed to be dredged to bypass what we refer to as a naturally occurring bypassing rate. And actually, the city needs to increase that volume by about another 20 to 25,000 cubic yards to meet that natural demand of the sand going from the west to the east and being bypassed. And I'll talk about that in a minute in regards to the to the inlet, to the East Pass Jetty improvements. This is a plot of the shoreline and volume changes. Not going to get into the numbers, but the biggest thing is, one of the things that you need to look at is that we have the inlet at this location. This blue line is actually the cubic yards per year that the change. Anything below this line is positive, meaning it's accreting. Anything above this line means that it's eroding. One of the things to notice is that on the west side of the inlet that you have a large volume of material that has accumulated, and that's a direct result of they just haven't been dredging on the west side as much as what is actually coming into that side of the inlet. So in order to get that at zero, what ends off being transported to that side, you need to dredge and bypass it to the further to the east. Even to the east side of the inlet, there's still this accretion of material. And then once we get further back into the critically eroding area, even though that the state has designated it as critically eroding, it's still accreting. And it's accreting at a pretty good rate of roughly about 2.3 cubic yards per year per linear foot of shoreline. If you want to compare that to like St. Joe Peninsula down by the Stump Hole, that's losing roughly about 20 cubic yards per linear foot per year. One of the things that the designation of critically eroding is not only in terms of the amount of volume that you're losing, but the reason that this particular shoreline is being designated as critically eroding is because the upland facilities, the buildings, the infrastructure are vulnerable to a certain level of storm event. So that's why the state has designated it as such. The alternatives that we looked at this update, and we'll be going through these briefly, is a beach restoration of a truck haul, is doing a beach restoration for the offshore sand source, looking at breakwaters, groins, some coastal structures that we were asked to look at, a dune enhancement with what's referred to as a geotextile core, dune enhancement with sand fencing and vegetation, and then these last four are not directly related to that critically eroding shoreline, but are more in terms of the efficiency of the inlet itself, how to bypass more sand from that inlet more efficiently. And that includes the East Pass Jetty, or East Jetty improvements, the placement or replacement of the existing pipeline, purchase of a new floating dredge plant, and a crane-mounted dredge head. The first is a beach restoration project from offshore sand source, and that would consist of roughly about 600,000 to 800,000 cubic yards of material from an offshore source. Every 8 years you would need to renourish it because that sand spreads. You get storm events, that's the typical renourishment interval. You would not restore all of the 600,000 to 800,000 cubic yards that you would place initially, but probably half of that. That's kind of our rule of thumb, is that once half the material is gone, then you would end up replacing it and keep on renourishing it. It is an ongoing requirement. Beach restoration is no different than going out and it is to build a new road. You got to design it, you have to permit it, you construct it, and X amount of years you have to go out and resurface it. So beach restoration is an infrastructure, and you have to look at it as a capital improvement and looking at it in terms of renourishing it over an X period of time. We estimated roughly about $5.5 million to do this. That's the most expensive option that we have in terms of beach restoration. Again, we had identified some potential sources of borrow offshore. These are shoals that we know that offshore of the shoreline that do contain large quantities of beach compatible material. But the only way of getting that material onto the beach is through a hopper or a coverhead dredge that basically costs $1 million, $1.5 million just in terms of mobilization costs to get there. It may not be the most needed, or looking at different options at this point in time. There's other cost-effective projects that we can look at in order to build that beach down at the along that critically eroding shoreline. Which brings me to the next one, which is the truck haul. is that we can take roughly 15,000 to 30,000 cubic yards on an annual basis out of the inlet that's being dredged now and truck it down to that shed shoreline segment, again, that within that critically eroding area. It's roughly at $150,000 to $250,000 each event. Again, that construction would be cost shared with the state. Is that at this point in time, if we do the initial project, that the funds that we do have available would be able to cover that on the state side in terms of that $465,000 that I mentioned earlier. And now this isn't enough to build back the beach, 40, 50, 60 feet wide, but you keep on doing this over time, and that beach you're going to actually start seeing to increase in width. One of the other things is that one of the things that we have as an issue is where we're placing the sand at this current point in time, is that the sand is being dredged from the inlet and placed immediately to the east. It's not getting into the system to be able to be moved further down the beach so that it starts to replenish this area. And I'll show that to you in a minute. One of the things is that we talked about stockpiling sand from the inlet. We can do that immediately downdrift to the east of the inlet itself. This is just a conceptual dredge management area, some basins, that this would be able to fit roughly about 30,000 cubic yards. So you could dredge X amount of sand out of the inlet over a month or two period. You can stockpile it immediately to the east, and then you can start down, truck hauling it down to that shoreline that's roughly about a mile down further to the east. And there's other ways that we can look at doing this, is that we can phase it with shorter quantities of material over time. So it all depends on how much beach width we have, what type of year that we're going to be able to do this, because we'd probably have to do it outside of sea turtle nesting season, which means is that we would be constructing this between November 1st and April 30th of every year. Some of the coastal structures that we were asked to look at to help capture sand is we looked at rock breakwaters. These are long linear structures along the shoreline. In the upper right-hand picture, we had just finished that about a year ago over at the Gator Lake within St. Andrews State Park. We constructed 4 breakwaters, and basically you get these scallop shorelines to it, so you're reducing the wave energy behind these structures so that sand does accumulate with it. But then the lower right-hand corner is actually a shot from the water, and these structures do extend above the water line by 2 or 3 feet. So some people believe that they're unsightly, some people like them, but basically you're going to be seeing these structures along that entire 6,000 feet of shoreline. The other thing is that it's roughly about $4.5 million worth of construction in order to construct these breakwaters. And again, they would be cost shared with the state, but that still means is that the city would have to come up with roughly about $1.75 million for this particular project. One of the other coastal structures that we were asked to look at were shore perpendicular structures. And these are groins. Instead of having shore parallel at the breakwaters, these things would be 90 degrees. One thing that they've talked about over the years is, or the sign was the New Jerseyization of shorelines. New Jersey supposedly has a lot of groin fields, and basically once you build one set of them, you have to keep on building and building because one set captures sand, and then you need to keep building down the beach in order to keep on capturing that sand. Permitting with these would be very difficult, but also, again, that they're very expensive, roughly about $3.5 million just to construct these in order to stabilize that segment of shoreline. Dune enhancement with the geotextile core. We've done about 3 or 4 of these projects. This one happens to be in South Walton County. For the 1.3 mile shoreline, you basically stack these geotextile tubes that are about 6 foot in diameter, one on top of the other, and then you fill them with sand, and then you cover them with sand, and you put vegetation on top of them. They're very effective when you're looking at increasing the level of storm protection to your upland structures. But at this point in time, you don't have enough beach to really construct these because your beach down at the El Governor and Toucans is so narrow, is that these structures would actually take up most of your dry beach. And they're still not inexpensive. They're about $2 million that would, in order to construct these, and you'd have to maintain these structures over time because the permitting requirements, you basically have to make sure that you keep at least 3 feet of sand on top of these at all time. And if you get a storm event, you have to come back in and you have to restore that dune in order to be consistent with the Permit Act, or the permit. Matter of fact, then, this was the post-construction of that same project that was covered with sand, planted. But this was one of the options that we did look at, was dune enhancement along the Mexico Beach shoreline. Is that placing sand fencing and dune vegetation is very effective in growing beaches, provided they have enough sand within the system that the sand can blow, that it can transport sand to the sand fencing and to this vegetation, and then that dune will start growing over time. And it's a fairly inexpensive proposition that roughly between $75,000 and $100,000 is that you can sand fence and do the entire segment in between that critically eroding shoreline. And then over time, probably 2, 3, 4 years, you start seeing a significant growth of the sand dunes. But again, it really is not going to grow your beach over time. It's more effective for dunes and dune vegetation. Getting back to the dredge history, is that one of the things that we're going to be looking at next is just that East Pass. Now, one of the things, or the East Jetty improvements, one thing to keep in mind is that, you know, just in 2016, you dredged roughly about 37,000 cubic yards. Looking at the west sand trap, is that there was, at least according to the records that we were provided, that there was no dredging on the west sand trap in 2014, 15, and then there was roughly about 12,000, 13,000 cubic yards that were dredged within that sand trap. But also look at the green, which is actually within the canal, is that when you reduce the amount of dredging that's within the west sand trap, all that sand starts going around the inlet or around that western jetty and starts getting deposited within the canal itself. So one of the things that it just translates where you have to do all of your dredging. And one of the things that we also notice is that the amount of sand that comes into the canal actually exceeds what is transported towards it. And I'll show you in a minute what I mean by that, but keep it in mind that you're doing a lot of dredging within the inlet itself. And one of the things is that we talk about where you're putting the sand. And one of the things is that you pointed out earlier that there is an accretion of sand immediately to the east of the inlet itself. It's because of where you are actually discharging a lot of that sand from the dredging dredge pipe out of the inlet itself. One of the things that you look at, and these are actually aerials that we took about 2 months ago with a drone, so these are fairly recent, is that you can see that when they were excavating inside the inlet, they were placing the sand immediately adjacent to the jetty and pushing it out. But the thing is that when waves start coming in, a lot of that sand is just being transported back into the inlet. And so what is happening is that you're doing a lot of recycling with sand. So the whole premise, if you remember in the beginning of my presentation, one of our recommendations back in 2008 was to extend the discharge of the pipe much further to the east and actually past the pier itself, which that pipeline was done, I think it was was built in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that the dredge in its current configuration can't push that material far enough to the east. So keeping this in mind, as a matter of fact, this is a photo of that same day of all the sand that was being stockpiled. And this jetty here is kind of a pile of debris. It's not what we refer to as very sand tight. So as waves come in, currents come in, it doesn't have to be a very big storm. It takes that sand and just pushes it back through that jetty. So one of the most important factors is making these structures sand tight so that sand does not move through it. And so, and one of the other things I wanted to point out is that we talked about the sand trap on the west side. Well, the sand has grown because the net sediment transport goes from west to east. So the net effect is this big accumulation of sand on the western side of this jetty. And there had been a time 2-3 years ago that we had that shoreline all the way back, probably about halfway of what it is today. So this sand is very easily coming back around into this inlet. And if you remember that chart I showed you is how much sand that you were dredging from inside of the inlet, that's one of the reasons, along with what's coming from the east side. So if you end off, making this jetty sand tight and extending it, is that then you get more capacity, more impoundment capacity from this sand from moving inside of it. And then as long as we start moving sand further to the east, you're going to further reduce the amount of dredging that you need to do. Matter of fact, if I go back. Yeah. So basically what happens is that you impound the sand along here, you move this shoreline back by dredging the western side, and then you start getting more capacity in here rather than this sand moving into the inlet itself. And you still are going to have to dredge sand, but it starts making it more efficient. It starts putting the sand where you need it to be, and you recycle a lot less over a period of time. And then, of course, your costs go down. Some of the other items that we were asked to look at was to replace the existing pipeline that we currently have there with a larger pipe. We have some costs on that. We had talked about a crane-mounted dredge head that was back in, I think that we actually looked at that back in 2004 or so. And basically what it is that it is a crane that you end up having a dredge head that's mounted on it. And so you would walk this crane out of the jetty, and you would end up just putting the dredge head in. It's connected hydraulically. The pipeline would still go underneath the inlet and would discharge further to the east. But then we start having to potentially increase the capacity of that western jetty, may have to improve that. But the problem with this is there's a good thing, bad thing. The one bad thing is that it's got a very small reach. We can't get out to the outer sandbar. We may or may not be able to reach most of that western sand trap. But the good thing about it is that you get to work in a lot more weather conditions. You actually increase the amount of times or the dredging frequency that you can work with this particular system. Then the other item was just to look at replacing the existing dredge with a new dredge. And I'll summarize these in the alternate comparison of the different costs. So we went from the beach restoration of $5.5 million to a truck haul, which is roughly 2.5, and that's per event. The breakwaters and the groins are, and even the dune enhancement with the geotextile core, they're all in the millions of dollars. And we don't believe that the dune enhancement with the geotextile core, at least in our conversations with DEP, would be eligible for cost share. So that would be solely on the city if that's the direction that the city decided to go. The dune enhancement, that's always encouraged by the state, and they do provide funding for that. Permits are very easy to get, and it is efficient. But then 7, 8, 9, and 10 are, again, getting back into the efficiency of the inlet itself. Is that the East Jetty improvements we estimated at roughly about $250,000. The replacement and extend the existing pipeline, roughly about $400,000. Purchasing a new dredge, we had gotten the cost roughly that it's, I think it was a 10-inch dredge that would be able to pump material further to the east, past that, past the pier itself. That's roughly about $500,000 to $600,000, and then the dredge-mounted crane head would be roughly about $750,000. Now, out of those last four, the East Pass jetty improvements would be the only one that DEP would cost share it. They do not. They'll pay for a contractor to come in and dredge your inlet, but they won't pay for the equipment. We've talked to them about that over the years, and they just won't buy equipment for local communities. A little bit more of a comparison. Well, one of the things that we did was looked at for each one of those projects within the beach segment. We looked at ranking them. We looked at beach performance, improvement of the inlet efficiency, a cost to benefit ratio, enhances the environment, permit feasibility, and minimize adverse impacts to the adjacent shoreline. We ranked each one of those, and in terms of the best bang for your buck at this point in time, really is looking at a beach restoration project as a truck haul. If that's what you decide on doing in terms of that segment of beach down by the critically eroding shoreline. And that's what we were talking about earlier. I mentioned is that, yeah, a beach restoration project from an offshore sand source, you'll see that immediately. And you'll see that within, constructed within a matter of 2 to 3 months, but it is very costly. But in looking at trying to fit all the elements in with the inlet, because you got a source of sand down at the inlet. You're dredging, this last year you dredged 36,000 cubic yards. You just need to take that sand and move it where it's needed. And you already have that source, and now it's just being able to get it down to a place where it is best utilized. So we ranked these. Beach restoration from an offshore source was second, and then the other ones fell into the place. Basically, the breakwaters and the groins, and even the geotextile core, permitting with that would take probably 2 to 3 years, if that. And if you remember, I talked about that actually your shoreline is not eroding that severely that breakwaters would be justified. It's actually accreting a lot of the area. Talking about the inlet is, again, these four different, is that we ranked the East Jetty improvements first. It is, again, eligible for state cost share. I think that with the dredge, at least in our conversations with Mel and some of the others, is that, the dredge is working. It's, although that you're doing a real good job with, duct tape and coat hangers, and I would say keep on trying to make that work until you absolutely need to, have a major overhaul or replace it. But there's other things that you can do to make the efficiency of that jetty and of the inlet and of your dredging that would give you a benefit or the most bang for your buck. And right now, it's that really that East Jetty improvements would, and at $250,000, which again would be cost shared with the state, it does provide a great benefit to the management of that inlet and will reduce your cost over a period of time. Just if on a general schedule, with a beach restoration truck haul, as long as that we place that sand above the mean high water line, because we're not really talking about a lot of sand, we have less than 30,000 cubic yards over that 6,000 linear feet, we wouldn't have to go for what's referred to as a joint coastal permit, is that we could do with a lesser intensive permitting process of a coastal control line permit instead. And 2, maybe 3 months at the most. But again, that those would end up being constructed within November to April 30th, which is outside of sea turtle nesting season. For one thing, it's outside of tourism season, although it seems like that tourism season is getting to be 12 months a year now. But then the East Jetty improvements, that is going to take longer because there's a lot more work in the water. We're going to have to go with Army Corps of Engineers, National Marine Fisheries are going to be a commenting agency. Then also still with a DEP permit. But it is, matter of fact, DEP, it has already, we've had a number of conversations with them. They do support the East Jetty improvements. So 12 to 18 months, believe it or not, actually is pretty quick for them. Then bidding award, construction roughly, again, about 2 months for that. So that's in general is my presentation. I'm certainly open for questions from you or the audience.
This is our second go at this.
But I must say that the video display, the visual display helps. Because at CDC, we were having trouble with seeing. This really helps, the video
I
display.
went back to the office, I plugged it in perfectly.
Of course.
Any questions from the floor? It's a good presentation, thank you.
Okay.
Other than we need money, money, money.
At this point, Your Honor, as Mr. Dombrowski indicated, we do have a grant ready and waiting for us. Our job now is to get a scope of services to DEP so they can actually do the agreement on our behalf. Mr. Britton has got someone in his office ready and waiting to work on that for us so we can get that up there. That being said, we need some direction on what you wish us to do. Like, do you want the East Jetty increased? I think at the very least, we do want to haul the sand down the beach. That's a no-brainer there, I think. But I know there's some talk that maybe doing the East Jetty isn't the best way to go for local reasons, or...
The grant we have right now is round numbers, $450,000 from the state, about $150,000 from Mexico Beach. Of course, that's an unfunded requirement that we have right now, but it is a grant that we have received, and like I said, it's extraordinary that we would get this grant. The truck haul system that we're talking about and our scope of work that I think Jeff's working on now for that grant will certainly speed up the process of beach renourishment, and we could have that project going as soon as turtle season ends this year. We've got a whole lot more than 30,000 yards stockpile right now, and we got another 30 probably on the west side if we ever get through all this. We did a major overhaul of the dredge in the last 2 years. We did the engine and pump. Last year we did the frame chassis this year. So we just got it back online and it's pumping quite often. I'm in support of the truck haul and by that time we will be able to program that into our next budget year.
As a point of clarification, the amount that the state is willing to fund is the $465,000. Our part is 155 additional for a total of 621.
That's correct. A quarter of the total.
Right.
What was the time limit? We need to let them know. Was it, I thought you said early in the next month?
Yes, sir. It basically, matter of fact, I've got an email this last week that they would like to get a scope of work from us or from the city probably within the next week or two. So, and it's one of those things is that, see, anytime that you deal with DEP is that they need to review the scopes of work before they'll actually go under contract with you. So once they review it, then they will make comments or they'll approve it. So then once that they do approve it, they'll come back with a contract to you. So given that, you probably do have about a month or so before, month or two before their contract comes back. And that contract is typically good in terms of the money being encumbered, that you have roughly about 1.5 to 2 2 years to spend it. So the whole key is to get that entire 600,000+ encumbered, which they've already said that they will do. Now, also keep in mind that as you're going through this, is that the money is that either through the CDC or through the city, that you're only looking at the permitting and design initially. So if we're looking at construction not until after sea turtle season of maybe 2017, maybe 2018, that's when you have to look at that other half of the money. So it's not like you have to come up with all of it within a month. And those permits are also usually good for about 5 years too.
You know, more realistically for us, we go into budget cycle in July, talking about next year's budget.
Yes.
If we were getting, even if we're getting ready for next year, we'd have to know what we're doing in July this year.
Yes.
Well, I think the sand hauling is the only thing that we can afford, to be truthful, compares to $1.5 million to $3.5 million. And the other one you had indicated, is it the groins, is that what?
That is correct, ma'am.
That the beach is so narrow there in front of El Governor and Toucans that it wouldn't really be beneficial at this point. So I'm thinking the truck, the sand hauling, because we can afford that. I mean, it's within our reach. The East Jetty, man, I'd like more information on, I don't have a problem with saying, yes, we'll do it, but we need pros and cons. I need pros and cons. Why should we do it? Why should we not do it? What, you know, and I'm sure there are hundreds on each side of that.
One of the things too is that we will be, based on the results of this meeting, is that we're in the review of actually a written report, the update. So that will have some written verbiage in there about pros and cons.
Okay.
I'll have to rewrite a little bit of it, but it certainly will show you what the benefits of it would be.
Okay.
I can see where it'd be beneficial, but one step at a time with a small budget.
Certainly. Understand.
Other comments?
I lived in Clearwater for several years, and I don't know if some people here may be familiar with Honeymoon Island. I saw them do renourishment twice in 20 years. The last time, it was probably 35, I don't know how many cubic yards. I'm saying it was 35 or 40 feet high, probably 100 feet wide, and about a mile long of sand. It started disappearing as soon as they put it down. It was beautiful for 3 or 4 years, and then we started seeing rocks again. Honeymoon Island is full of rocks.
Yes.
And I don't think we have the problem here that Honeymoon Island had as far as refurbishing. But it's an ongoing process that will never stop.
Yeah. And it's the one thing that you do have is with Honeymoon, I do know that project well, and they've actually renourished it again, but they put in some breakwaters, which is reducing but that's a side note, is that even within your critically eroding area, it's still growing at 2 cubic yards, a linear foot. And so it's actually not in bad shape. It's just the issue is that it's putting the sand to where it's needed. So like with the truck haul, this is a perfect example of where you're kind of utilizing a resource and just reallocating it where it needs to go.
Yeah, and they didn't have a source at Honeymoon Island.
Exactly.
It had to come in for miles.
Yeah, they trucked it in. I think it was 12 miles.
Yes, it was terribly expensive.
And did you say the truck hauling was a continuous thing? Let's say if we did it next year, would we do it in 5 more years, or what would be the time frame that would you keep truck hauling?
Yeah, at this point in time, I think that there is such a deficit, and I think it's what you do with the rest of your dredging protocol, meaning that if you are able to take the sand currently that you've been placing immediately to the east of the jetty, and if you're able to move that even to the east side of the pier, to get it back into that system so it could start naturally re-nourishing the beach, is that you're kind of in a catch-up right now. Is that you got to get caught up in your sand budget. So I can see the first 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years of having to do it every year. But over a period of time, it's going to start lengthening out. Your frequency is going to be a lot less because you're moving a lot more sand down. You're moving the discharge further down, getting it to where it needs to. But I would envision within your first 5 years, you would almost be doing it every year.
But 30 to 50,000 yards a year, more than likely.
Correct.
We need to increase now to about 55 to 60,000 yards.
That's what the inlet management protocol says it should be. And that would ensure that and I think the best place for you to interrupt the sand, basically it's a river of sand that comes down the coastline, is over on that western sand trap. Because then you interrupt it before it gets into the inlet, which, as we all know during fishing tournaments, is that we've had problems here in terms of the inlet closes. So if you're able to interrupt that sand on the west side, bypass that before it gets in the inlet, also reduces the amount of time that your inlet is closed.
Okay. Do we need a consensus to proceed with the scope of work?
We don't have to. I think that's pretty evident.
Okay. Good. Any more questions? All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll be-
Next on our agenda is minimum standards for single-family residences. Mr. McLaughlin.
Over the past few months, well, actually over the past year, I've noticed that we've had some homes built in our areas that probably are smaller than what we would want right now. One of them I know is around 600 square foot. Technically, we don't have anything in our LDR that really wouldn't allow someone to come in and basically build a shed and get a permit to live in it if they had the amenities of a home. I'm not trying to discourage small homes. Small homes are something that seems to be our society is interested right now. But I think we probably would need to check with our community through the zoning board and see if we couldn't find something at the lower level that we would say, okay, we don't want anything lower than this in our community. It would then stop anyone coming in and basically building a 10 by 10 shed and calling it a residence. And right now, if it's set up properly, we would have to say okay. I think the same thing goes along with the last subdivision we looked at a couple of weeks ago. There were concerns with lot sizes. Again, we don't have anything in our LDR that says a minimum lot size. I think it would be prudent for us to put some basic limits in our LDR on the bottom side. And then one of them that kind of got to me, there is a small home that was approved, is under construction still. That's a residence that has a garage door on its front door. It is basically the front door. I haven't talked to the individual, but looking at it, I could see, as small as it is, it looks like a garage, someone opening the front door and storing their boat inside their kitchen. Personally, I don't think that's good for our community. I would like to see us put something in the LDR that basically says, for vehicles, garages, driveways, but not in your living room. These are three things I would like to see our zoning board take a look at, talk to our community, see if it wouldn't be prudent to put the bottom level on some of these actions that we have on single-family residents in our city. So my basically request is that I would like to see it go to zoning and see if they couldn't, if the board's agreeable, see if they could come up with an idea after talking with their citizens of putting the base limits on what we would like to have as a single-family residence in size and scope.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I'd like to see it done sooner than later. Because we've already got a problem. And I've talked with several citizens that didn't quite understand that. But we don't need to wait 6 or 8 months to do it. We need to do it.
An interesting observation about the door. I agree with you 100%. It looks like a garage, it smells like a garage, it's more than likely a garage, because I already saw the boat in there. But we don't have a standard for a door on a house either.
No.
That's something else that's got to be looked at. He's saying this is a door.
You know, you can't argue with him right now where LDR is written.
That's correct. And yes, we do need to put that on an immediate agenda for planning and zoning to look at this. I'm not as concerned about lot size because we have a ratio of lot size to houses. But a 600 square foot house with our current ratio only means it's got to have a lot. What about 1,300 foot of lot or something like that? Build a 600 foot house. We don't have any lots that small. The smallest thing I know we have is about 1,200 square feet. We'll put that on the agenda for that. Comments from the floor? Yes, ma'am.
I am not in favor of having a minimum lot size. I'm one of the ones who raised the issue of small lots in the new 8th Street subdivision. And I live next door to the little blue house that is one of them that Bill was mentioning. That's a small house, it's 608 square feet, 16 by 38 feet. And I don't have a problem with that little bitty house there, it's actually very cute. Works okay for me. I am more concerned with lot size. We have a town that was platted out with certain designations of lots for each area of town. Started out with the 50 by 100 foot lots basically along 98 and moving back a couple of streets, so they got slightly bigger, and then back on the back side of town they're even larger. And if you're going to have a residential single family, residential low density zoning, then I feel that you should have a minimum lot size for sure, because otherwise what you get is basically houses crammed in on lots that make it apartments. So I am definitely in favor of you looking at a minimum lot size, and I would say certainly nothing smaller than what you've got on 98, which is basically 50 feet across and 100 feet deep. So please do look at that. I'm not as concerned about the house size as I am the land, because if you're going to live that close together, it might as well be apartments. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, since nobody has said anything so far, I'm guessing y'all were here about leave no trace. Good guess, right? Leave no trace, just a little bit of background for those of you who may not know. In 2015, the council considered leave no trace, and we had, in a 4-to-1 decision, we decided to adopt a program called Keep It Neat. In 2016, a citizens committee put together an ordinance for leave no trace. The council considered whether or not we were going to adopt it, and we decided we would not adopt it in its current form. By law, they had the appropriate number of signatures to bring this ordinance to a referendum. The public was given an opportunity to look at this ordinance, and then on February the 21st, a citywide referendum election was held, and leave no trace passed with a margin of 59% to 41%. In short, 6 people are happy and 4 people are not. So it was even though it was a split decision, the council had no other course of action but to adopt this ordinance, and we have done that. Even no matter how anyone on this council felt about leave no trace, we are now bound to enforce this ordinance. And that brings us to the item on the agenda today. couple of things that we've got to talk about. And it comes first to commercial vendors on the beach, primarily one or two, whether or not they have to comply with the ordinance. In Panama City Beach, they wrote a leave no trace ordinance that said, commercial vendors, you have an exclusion, and this does not apply to you. The ordinance adopted by the referendum vote had no such provision, so the ordinance applies to both commercial folks and individuals equally. That's all I'll start with. Any other council member would like to speak?
Nope, well said.
Gee, that's pretty cut and dry. Comments from the floor, please. Please.
Mr. Mayor, the council, Michael Henry from the law firm of Burke Blue, Hutchison, Walters & Smith. I'm here on behalf of Hector Vasquez. As you know, Mr. Vasquez has operated his beach service and jet ski business behind the El Governor Hotel for the past 17 years. We start out by saying Mr. Vasquez is not opposed to the idea of leave no trace. In fact, he may be a champion of it because for the past 17 years he's provided those type of services to the city of Mexico Beach. Every night they clean the beach around the El Governor and make sure the trash is picked up. They've disposed of numerous tents or lawn chairs or beach chairs that are discarded on the beach. However, Mr. Vasquez we have some serious concerns about the ordinance that was adopted. Mainly, it doesn't contain any exceptions, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor. There's no exceptions even for the municipality, not for the city of Mexico Beach. The Panama City Beach Ordinance has specific exceptions. It allows for various items to be left on the beach. It allows for trash containers. The city of Panama City Beach puts out trash containers to promote people throwing away items. Under the ordinance here, if Mexico Beach puts out trash cans, they have to haul those off the beach every night. Signs placed by government agencies, items placed by persons under the authority acting under the city manager or other governmental agency. Structures, including boardwalks, decks, dune walkovers constructed and permitted by the city, Bay County, or the state of Florida, and items placed on the beach by persons who have authorization or a permit to engage in marine turtle nesting research.
Excuse me, Mr. Henry, they
Yes.
can't hear you in the back.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Tom, you didn't
Okay.
see that.
But there's no exceptions under the Leave No Trace ordinance that's been adopted here in Mexico Beach, including it would require the city to remove items off the beach. As you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, there is an exception in the Panama City Beach Ordinance for beach vendor services. What we're asking for is a reasonable accommodation or the city council to take up and have a hearing on exceptions that need to be in this Leave No Trace ordinance. There are various, the way it's drafted, there are also some difficult drafting issues that come up. It talks about that the ordinance wants to prohibit obstructions in personal property left on the public beaches of the city of Mexico Beach. But then under the ordinance, it talks about it shall be unlawful for items generally used for swimming, sunbathing, or beach recreation to remain unattended on the beach between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. The ordinance itself does not define what the beach is. It doesn't make any delineation between public or private. As stated before, Mr. Vasquez's business provides a service to the city and its residents. It does clean the beach every night. It takes all its umbrellas, it stores them away, it takes the pads off of the chase lounges, stores them away. He pulls the jet skis up to the retaining wall behind the El Governor, and then his staff goes around and picks up the trash. Every morning they empty their trash cans, cleaning the beach. That is a stretch of beach that the city won't have to worry about hiring anybody to clean or take care of. He offers his equipment to emergency responders for the city. If a boater is missing, if somebody's drowning, if a kayaker goes out and is missing, emergency services have worked with Mr. Vasquez and his company to use their jet skis, use their parasail boat to help with those operations. He provides an entertainment option that's available to the guests of the El Governor and to the public at large. And he also ensures that boats and other motorized watercraft stay a safe distance from the shoreline. We believe the ordinances enacted could face some potential legal challenges based on some of the ambiguity in it, especially defining what the beach is. So we would like the City Council to take up and talk about modifying the ordinance. The spirit, Mr. Vasquez is all for, but we believe that there needs to be exceptions. The ordinance itself talked about that it would allow for providing for severability and modifications that may arise from consideration at public hearings. However, as written, there is not a single exception in the ordinance. Also, as you continue down, there's a severability section, but there's not a modification provision. So we would like this to be an item discussed either further tonight or at a public hearing. We request a reasonable accommodation, and we believe that there needs to be some rewording of the ordinance that was adopted.
Counselor, did you know that I personally approached Mr. Vasquez and told him that I'd like to work out a reasonable accommodation for his equipment? Mm-hmm. Did he tell you that?
He did, yes, sir.
Did he tell you that he refused?
What I understand it transpired was he was also told that he would have to comply and everything would have to come off the beach every night. The jet skis, the chase lounges, the storage boxes, everything. It would not be his preference to do so. It would require additional man-hours, manpower every day to set up that beach. So we would like the opportunity to hopefully work under this ordinance and help correct it, maintain it, make it better, and give a vehicle that helps promote the beautification of the beach, which we believe he already is doing with the services he provides there behind the El Governor.
Did he tell you also that he is only on the beach conducting business because the city council of past years gave him permission to do so?
I understand that he has an occupational license and is allowed to do so, yes.
Questions?
I don't have any questions. I understand what you're saying, but we didn't write the ordinance, and yes, I have heard that the ordinance could have been written in a different way by another legal person. But we didn't write the ordinance, and the ordinance was written by this citizens committee. The people in Mexico Beach voted for it. The majority voted for it. And we have to follow it, whether we like it or not. We have to follow it. And so the way it was written is the way we have to follow. Otherwise, we're saying, well, you don't have to do it because you're so-and-so, or you don't have to do it because you're so-and-so. We'll look the other way because so-and-so. And I don't think that the majority of the people in Mexico Beach want that to happen. I do feel that a lot of people were not aware of what they voted, what the yes was for. It was to keep the beach clean. I don't think the majority of them read the ordinance. Most people don't. In any ordinance, in any referendum, most people don't read the fine print when you go into a voting booth. So I hear what you're saying, and I don't have a problem with Hector's things there, but the ordinance says no. So we make one exception, then where do we stop? And
if I may address, I think part of the problem is under the ordinance as it's written, it doesn't define what the beach is. It doesn't make any delineation between public or private. So I believe there would be enforceability issues and a potential legal challenge. I understand that it was adopted through the referendum, voted on by the public, and under it, the city has to enforce the ordinance. The problem becomes if you're enforcing something that may have legal problems in enforcing, that would something that the city should consider. And like I said, in the title of the ordinance, it talked about providing for modifications that may arise from consideration at public hearing. I don't believe that it means that this cannot be modified or amended from time to time when valid legal considerations come up before the city at these type of meetings. Like I said, if it's all in one, anything the city puts out must come out each night too. So there may be things that weren't considered in the drafting of it that I think need to be addressed by the city to make sure that this is something that can be enforced and maintained and help promote the beauty of the beach.
I have a question, and you mentioned legal procedure. So if the city is following the ordinance that was voted on, so do you go against the city legally, or do you go against the group that wrote the ordinance?
We hope we don't have to go against anyone.
Okay. It
would be a challenge to the ordinance, so I believe the city would have to be a party if it ever had to get that far.
Yeah. As to the issue of public versus private lands, it's not a major concern in Mexico Beach because there are only two parcels that claim any ownership of the beach. One is the annex to the El Governor Motel, and one is a property at the we call it where the ditch comes out at 8th Street. That's the only two on record. I understand what you're saying. We could have done that, and I also agree with you that it's not that we cannot hold a public hearing and modify this ordinance with time. For example, I think a part of this ordinance that's absolutely unnecessary is to do leave no trace 365 days a year. We don't have hardly anybody on the beach about 4 or 5 months out of the year. So that is certainly something that should be looked at. Yes, obviously a trash receptacle is something the city has out there. Yes, it should be excluded obviously because it's for the public benefit. But a private vendor operating on the beach is just not the same thing.
Well, and if I may, Mr. Mayor, he talked about the annex behind the El Governor. He does operate behind the El Governor, so there's a portion of that would be private property. So if he were to store his items on the private property, we believe there would be an enforceability issue with the ordinance as written.
Mayor?
And then we would start talking about the rights of cities to control the beach up to the high water line and all that other stuff. I got it.
I think also what I'm hearing is you're almost wanting a solution tonight. This is a brand-new ordinance, whether written by us or not, or someone else. I've seen in front of this council, and I've seen the council either sitting here or not sitting here, write an ordinance that we've had a lot of input from our city, our citizens, and like all large ordinances, sometimes there's something just wrong. We still have asked in the past our citizens, until that can be taken care of, to comply, whether business citizens, whether they're individuals. It takes time to look at an ordinance, rewrite, talk to people, and get it right, or at least better than it was. And if we started tonight, I don't think that this would be done in 2 weeks, probably be several months before it would really, because it's as new as it is, and it's fresh on a lot of citizens' minds that want it here, it would take a while. And whether it started soon or it'll be started down the line sometime, I'm sure it'll have to be looked at. But all citizens are going to have to comply with it until that changes. If we start just making an exception because, yeah, we know it's, we got to look at it, then frankly, my neighbor across the street who's been used to leaving his tents on the beach for the week and a half that he spends here, he has just as much right then to come to me and ask for an exception for his tents. I think it's all of our citizens that have to comply until any changes, if they're made, need to be made. And we're gonna have to have time. We've only had this thing going for a month. And we haven't even started enforcing it fully. It's my feelings.
I think this is an indication for everybody in this room to pay attention now in the future for ordinances that come up for votes and whatever we try to do. That's why we encourage people to come, sit and listen, because we have to sit and listen sometimes for the very first time because of the sunshine law. We can't discuss things among ourselves. It has to be all discussed right here. And so everybody could input this. I fell in that same category before I got involved with this, as I was kind of lackluster about what was going on, till it affected me. And now we have people that are showing up. Well, gee, we'd like to see these people show up prior to, and before a vote and before the whatever. And I think the people that were coming up with Leave No Trace had good ideas, they had good intentions, but the general public did not understand everything that went on with this. I mean, hardly anybody on my street did, because I asked them all. And some of them voted for it, they put their name down, yeah, sure. But I don't think we need to drag this out. Bill's got some good ideas, but why should it take months for us to revise this? I think we should do it. Why can't we do it quickly? We already know what we don't like about it. Just because it's government doesn't mean we have to drag our feet with doing something about it. And I still think, we're still trying to figure out how we're going to pay to do what the ordinance says we must do. It wasn't going to cost us any more money, but all of a sudden it's costing us more money. And we don't have money. We didn't budget anything for this. So there's all kinds of ramifications here that I don't like. I don't know if I can say I didn't vote for it. I like the basic idea, but I saw some problems that we're having now. And a lot of people didn't see these problems. And now we're living through this and nobody likes it. We don't like it. I don't particularly care about the chairs being on the beach, but the ordinance says we can't do it. So what do? Do we say, oh, to hell with the ordinance, we don't care what it said anyway? Can't do that. We have to do things that we don't always like. I've always thought that I was always 100% right on everything that I decided needed to be done for the city. And I have found out that I've been wrong a few times. And I think some of us sitting here are finding out we've been wrong a few times. So, I think everybody has their heart in the right place. It's just a matter of us getting things finite, getting it trimmed down to the way it needs to be. And I think some of our responsibility is to get it done. And I don't think anybody up here on this board likes exactly the finite items here we've discussed. So let's do something about it. That's my idea.
Comment?
I wish Hector would have come to the committee writing the ordinance sooner so that maybe he could have presented to them. Maybe the ordinance was written with Hector in mind. I don't know that. I'm not sure of that. I don't know if we need to have a special workshop to get input. Maybe people that signed it to support Leave No Trace didn't have that in mind. I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. So it's just, it seems like, we've come a long way with Leave No Trace, and here we are at it again. So I don't have any problem talking about it and discussing it. And it was one of the first times that it was true the majority of the people wanted something. A lot of time that's thrown around up here when it's not really a majority of the people. We don't know really what what it is, but this was one of the times that a majority of the people wanted this ordinance. They wrote it in a way, maybe that's the way they meant it. I don't know. Maybe they could come in here with a special meeting and give some opinion on it.
I appreciate your forbearance, as we've all talked, we certainly don't want you to feel unwelcome here. As you know, due course on anything would take 2 months. So we're up right back to the original question. Do we enforce this ordinance now for everybody? We're not looking to put Hector out of business and kick him off the beach. I told him the same. But we do need him to comply the best he can and in reasonable amount with the ordinance as it's written, at least in the meantime, because a town hall meeting might be in order for this thing to have more discussion on it. But as it stands right now, it's an ordinance and it's on the books. We did adopt it by law as required. So that's where we're at.
I would appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with the city about the specific items that are on the beach behind the El Governor, because there is a vending shack where they do the rentals out of. There's beach storage boxes. There's the jet skis. I'm sorry. I would like to discuss, which specific items on the private part of the beach would have to be removed. There's the shack where the vending occurs from. There's beach storage boxes. The jet skis are pulled up to the seawall every night. So, there's definitely questions about what needs to be done to comply as well that need to be worked out, I believe.
The biggest eyesore, I've been on the beach 8 days myself since this ordinance was passed, the entire length of the beach. The biggest obstacle on the beach is the more than 70 lounge, heavy wood lounge chairs that are out there. You can't get around them. If anybody sets up behind them in what I think Hector and I would refer to as the traffic lane behind those chairs, then you can't get past, I can't get past that location on the beach with a four-wheeler. And that's during the day. At night, though, that would be the same thing. Now, right now, we're going to talk later about how and when we're going to do that. But one issue that's come up repeatedly is having fuel on the beach. You can't have a fuel dispenser on the beach, period. It's against our ordinances, it's against EDP, it's everything else. You can't bring fuel down there if that's a problem. And the only way he can fuel those machines is in to carry them across the street to his fuel location. So that's a minor issue, but he can't have fuel on the beach. Certainly the shacks, the storage, and that kind of stuff is something that's imperative to his business. But again, something I think that we could consider is a reasonable accommodation for Hector's business. A reasonable accommodation. And 70 lounge chairs left in the center of the beach is not reasonable, in my point of view.
I think it would be good to know exactly what we consider private beach and what we consider public beach.
If Mel, you have that chart with you, that pictorial?
I do not.
It's basically somebody from El Governor helped. About 2/3 of El Governor is the public beach, and 1/3 the annex. Is that about right?
Yes.
There it is.
Can we enlarge it?
What does that mean?
Can you enlarge it?
Means they have ownership rights behind the annex.
Just the annex?
Yes.
So if we go with the conversation, the idea that let's look at if we can, and I don't know legally, at what point can we look at an ordinance and change it? And what's the process, Mel, for that?
The public hearing process.
But is there a time span, once it's so it's in effect now, do we have to wait so many months or whatever before we do that? Or do we want to wait for so many months? If we do, well, then we really can't do anything.
I'm not aware if there's a requirement to wait any particular time.
I think the announcement has to be public for so many days, I think,
Right. We've got to make sure the public is involved and everybody has their say.
Then you have to have a first reading and then a second reading.
Yes, sir.
Well, you probably also are going to have at least a couple of meetings, because the first meeting's going to be gather information of what everyone thinks it needs to be. And I think you have to have a discussion before you even do the first reading to get the new ordinance down pat what.
Well, absolutely. If we're
So,
gonna make any changes to it, we need to know exactly.
You're
what-
really talking, at least 2 meetings, public hearings and so forth before you even have an ordinance ready to look at.
So again, it's gonna be a 2 to 3 month process. It just something happen faster than that.
So,
And frankly, I would like to ask Hector, I think if he'll work with us and help us, not only in the public meetings, but what he does on the beach and help us there, it's going to help him in the long run.
I think it could be beneficial to everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. I do appreciate your time and consideration this evening. Thank you.
I don't have a problem with going ahead with a hearing, because this is an issue, and we certainly don't want it to get bigger than what it is now. And then let's hear from everybody else. Looking out at the audience there, I see definitely one person that was on the committee, but I hopefully, when we have the hearing, we would have majority, we would have more people that wrote the ordinance that could come and speak as to what they were thinking.
I wasn't quite sure what the rules were, but I just had a couple of questions for you.
This is a workshop, just
Okay.
speak, it's fine.
And I don't have a dog in this fight, just so you know, but I'm curious as to if there was anything in the ordinance that stated any kind of difference having to do with businesses or a business as different from private citizen. And also, if we don't have the money to fund this yet and to do it, I'm just not sure how we can ask people to comply to something that we can't even do yet. It is, and I'm all for people working together and getting stuff done, and I know everybody's mad about it. As I guess my only thought in this is, as a business owner, nobody is really getting rich as a business owner down here in Mexico Beach, and things that make it harder for businesses and more expensive makes it harder. And some of the businesses that are down here are actually offering things to people that come, which is good for us. So I'd just like you to keep that in mind as you're making decisions, that it is important to try, in my opinion, to work with businesses on things, because it's kind of a hard thing. So I would just appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Your first question, private versus business, there is no difference in the ordinance. And the second issue is to compliance. I'll speak to everyone here about where we're at on compliance. As soon as the ordinance was passed, we began patrols on the beach. It was early in the season. Nobody was here very much. There wasn't very much stuff out there to even look at. Even Hector wasn't set up, in the end of February. So it's been right along then. We don't have money outside the city to pay for beach patrols, for compliance inspections, and then for enforcement of leave no trace. Yesterday, we had a meeting here with the CDC, who collects the bed tax money for us all, or receives the bed tax money for all of us, especially the old governor, who pays probably the most of anybody in town. And they were able to give us $11,800 to supplement the beach cleaning budget that we already have, which they already contributed $18,000 for. How much do we already? That's really all the money that's there. There's $18,000, there is $11,800, and then there is the amount of money we took out of the general fund and put in that budget, because we already knew we were going to have to empty the trash cans. It's already in the budget. We already have the employee on staff to empty the trash cans. Now, is it a specified guy? No, because it's not a full-time job. It is the Public Works Department, sometimes the Street Department, sometimes the Garbage Department, wherever our Public Works Director has to find the persons to do the job that's out there. We have a full-time code enforcement officer who has rode the beach, and let's give you an example. Last Thursday, he tagged 7 items for a pickup that were unlawfully left on the beach. We did not patrol Friday. I patrolled Saturday. Only one of those tagged items remained on the beach. That means when they came back to the beach and they found the tag on it, they said, whoa, they're serious. So they picked up their stuff. We only had one to dispose of. And then I found a second one. Well, on Monday, the beach was ridden again on Sunday. I don't know, you rode Sunday. Did you find any violations on Sunday?
There was 3, I believe, that I found in the evening.
Okay, 3 on Sunday. Monday morning, when we sent our regular guy down the beach with the dumpster, we picked up all violated items and we picked up all the trash. Now, that's easy when there's nobody out there. If you wait till we get 10,000 people in town, it's going to be impossible. It's going to be wild. The guy from Panama City Beach told us he picks up 100 tents a day. A day or a week, I don't want to mistake that. A day. That's a huge thing. And we had hundreds of tents on the beach here last year. So we do not have all the funds we need to enforce Leave No Trace. We're not going to be able to get help from the CDC past what we already have gotten for this year. They're in the middle of their budget year too. And we're not going to be able to get it from the TDC because the fellow that come and talked to us at the CDC was from the TDC. Alphabet soup. But they're the ones with all the money. And it all kind of boils back down to, can we even afford to hire a contractor for 1 month to come help us with Leave No Trace? And the answer is no, we cannot. We got to take it out.
What do you do?
We take it out of our hide. We take people who are detailed to do other jobs to do this job.
I've got some options for you.
I did ask Adrian to
We have all the options, that's coming up.
come up
But
with Plan B, C,
What
D,
have
and
we
E.
done so far and how are we doing it? We're doing it the best we can.
Right.
For example, there's no tagging reference in the ordinance, but it doesn't make sense for me riding down the beach to check for violations to also have a Ford tractor and a dumpster behind me to throw things away. It's a lot easier to tag it and then let the guy who already is coming down here pick it up. It's a lot easier.
Well, when you have an ordinance like that passes, who decides how to work it and tweak it? Y'all don't do that?
The ordinance was passed as written. It's a matter of law. By the way, they brought the ordinance to the council. It's a citizen's ordinance.
Okay.
That went through due course, all the legal loopholes, all the jumps, all the verifications. And then, I hate to say it, folks, but if you're against Leave No Trace and you didn't vote, and now you're unhappy, don't be. Because that's just the way the vote is. We're a democracy. But we're doing the best we can. If it boils right down to it, are there going to be lapses in good enforcement of this ordinance? Yes. This budget year, it certainly will.
Okay, well, that answers a few questions.
May I make,
Top of your head.
may I make a
What's your
comment?
head?
There was a comment that was said that says if you have an ordinance and you can't fund it, why are you going to ask the citizens to comply with it? We ask the citizens to comply the same reason the state asks the citizens to comply, asking us to stop at stop signs. The state knows we don't have enough highway patrolmen, police officers to be around every stop sign, but it's a law. They asked us to comply, and I think with our ordinance, just like a stop sign, if the citizens don't comply, and we're patrolling, we're going to take care of it. There may be lapses, just as I can run a stop sign if there's no one around and I'm stupid enough to do it. But that doesn't mean there may not be a cop halfway down the block.
I'm Nikki Wood, 2105 Highway 98, Driftwood Inn, but I'm on the Turtle Patrol. I have been for 17 years. We can't have people driving on the beach before the Turtle Patrol surveys to make sure there's no turtle tracks. And Monday we were trying to rescue a little Kemp's Ridley, which is the really rare turtle, and I just got it off the beach and here comes the dumpster down the beach, but Kemp's Ridleys lay in the daytime. The other turtles lay at night. And so we're gonna have to be really careful about that.
Okay. We're working with the Turtle Patrol. We have received several pieces of correspondence from the group. All right, who's going to give the options that the staff talked about?
Adrian was our scribe this morning, so he can.
You had it off last week, it's your turn.
All right, outside the box, bear with us. Some people may think we're crazy, but they're all good.
Adrian?
You can't hear me?
Thank you.
I'm trying to move it closer. All right, outside the box options. I have 5 of them. First one is option A. Continue to move forward with the execution of the contract with Coastal Parasail, using the estimate of 99 pickups at a cost of $300 per pickup, for a total cost of $29,700, deducting the payment of $11,800 from the CDC. That leaves the remaining $17,900 to be funded by the city. This will require a budget amendment and the addition of funds. I find 5 funding options that are unrestricted or restricted but able to be unrestricted by council action. The first one being utility tax fund that is restricted to public works uses. This would be a public works use. There is approximately $495,000 less any other amendments that have been made since the beginning of the year. Second option, canal fund revenue. There is approximately $250,000 remaining in our canal fund, pending the canal completion. We don't have a hard number of what that will be until the project is complete. 3, we could use boat launch revenue. That has $43,500. 4, we could use general fund reserves, which is $1,102,927.18. We have never touched general fund reserves. It's there for emergencies. That's what it was built for. Or 5 is the final option on funding, and that is the Parks and Rec impact fees, which currently have $30,000 less the cost of the banners and other amendments that have occurred since the beginning of the year. So that is option A. Option B.
Wait a minute. How much money was in number 4?
In the general fund reserve, $1.1 million. Option B, focus on education. Utilize the ESU staff. Request that ESU day shift workers drive the beach twice per shift, providing information to the public regarding the new ordinance. Night shift, which usually comes in at 7 p.m., at the beginning of their shift will tag all items left on the beach. Cost of this education is free, as there is always an employee working in ESU 24 hours per day. This does not take them from their jobs as they spend their time on call. We have heard almost annually during the budget cycle that they need to be doing something while not on call, and this is the perfect utilization of their time. The collection can take place with the Public Works departments. To ensure not one department falls severely behind, staff will alternate which department will come in at 6 a.m. to do the pickup. For example, on Mondays, Road and Street Department would come in. On Tuesdays, Parks and Rec would come in. On Wednesdays, Sanitation would come in, etc. On the weekends, overtime will be available for employees to sign up and work collecting the items starting at sunrise. Cost of this approach will be the overtime and tipping fees, which is estimated to be approximately the amount of money already dedicated by the CDC, $11,000 to $13,000. No budget amendment would be needed. Option C, similar to option B, bring back beach patrol. Request that the police department bring reserve officers to patrol the beach and provide information to the public. Have them work 6 to 7 hours per day from approximately 1 or 2 p.m. until 8 or 9 p.m. Cost of bringing this in at 48 hours per week, and their hourly wage would be approximately $7,800 to finish out the season. The collection will take place the same as in option B. Total additional cost for the addition of beach patrol at $7,800 to finish out the year would require a budget amendment from one of the previously mentioned funds, plus the addition of the police impact fee account. That account has about $17,000. It's the lowest amount they have. Option D, attempt to utilize volunteers to do all the beach cleanup and have a schedule of volunteers out after sunrise until 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. until sunset. Cost will be minimal unless the city provides these volunteers with city equipment to be used. which will create an insurance nightmare and liability concerns. And the final option, option E, we believe it's too late for this year, but possibly for next year, go out for RFQs to treat the position as a 1099 employee, just like our harbor master. Require them to obtain their own insurance and equipment to provide the service. The contracted individual would also be responsible for their own disposal and tipping fees and take the city out of the equation entirely. They may pick up any time between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. as long as they complete the pickup. If picking up during dark hours, they will be responsible to obtain turtle watchers. That cost is unknown and will depend on the results of that bid process.
Thank you.
Option A.
Option A is the current,
That only accounts for 5 months out of the year.
correct, finish out the year. These are to finish the
So we
year,
still have 7 months that we have to take care of.
to finish this budget cycle. That's what these are.
Actually, all of these options are just for the summer.
Correct. That's as creative as we got this morning, so.
Good job.
I have a bit more creativity on the throw in the mix. We have a full-time code enforcement officer who changes work schedule from 12 noon to 8 p.m. That'll take care of 5 days a week. He can do his regular duties up till 5. He can do beach duties after that.
So he'd be tagging, is that what you're saying?
We already pay him.
I know, but after, we're not tagging anything that's left till after 7 p.m., right?
That's correct.
Or early in the morning, sunrise.
That's correct. But he wouldn't go over there until after 5 o'clock. It takes longer than that to patrol the beach. But he'd give him an adequate amount of time to do that. By the way, Mel's not real fond of this idea. Right, Mel?
If you say so.
There you go.
Well,
I like the idea of a patrolman on the beach, and we're hoping some people come with input when we have our budget meeting, because I'd like to see that developed for next year. I think that could solve a lot of problems, and it could be a good humor man as well as a law enforcement person at the same time. But we don't have the money right now to do that, right?
well, I would like to scratch D, volunteers. Because
They don't
it's a
work.
great idea, but you know what? If Aunt Jane comes in today, I can't go, and who cares? I'm volunteering, no big deal. And so I think that would just be a headache. So my personal feeling would be to scratch D.
And that's probably the only one I may have put a little bias in saying insurance nightmare and liability concerns.
Well, that's true.
It would be
But it's true.
You know, somebody gets hurt, then
We can't put non-city employees on city equipment.
I don't like your idea, Tom, about the code enforcer, because I think he's doing a great job. And if you change his hours, I just don't think that that's fair in the middle of the street.
fair.
So I don't like F. I think it's great if we can have the ESU drive up and down a couple times. Pardon me? And if we can get somebody, I don't like, and I know that this would be cost effective, we always seem to be having trouble keeping employees, and it's particularly in the summertime, and then we want to use them on a rotating basis. I'm sure you've talked to Philip and Mel, so it must be okay with them. So I trust what I guess not.
My job isn't to like what's going on. My job
Okay. Beach patrol, I think, would be great if we could bring it back, but I don't think that that's solving our issue of picking up the things this year.
Yeah, I think it would help next year.
Yes.
Good humor man plus an iron fist if you needed one. But it'd take the right personality to do what I could see it being very well received by the public.
I forgot what E was.
1099 contract.
Oh,
1099.
That's for next year, I
That's,
think.
yeah, I agree.
And I don't like the idea of volunteers either. I mean, it sounds real good, but you gave some good reasons, and then the possibility with somebody getting hurt, and then it's, lawyers appear. Sorry, didn't mean anything by that. But that's what happens.
In the process of elimination, I'm not in favor of taking money out of dedicated funds. Previous councils and this council have set aside monies in the canal fund, the boat ramp fund, to do specific work so it doesn't come out of the taxpayer's pocket. There are funds that are generated from outside the city. I'm not in favor of using those funds. We brought Parks and Rec down to nearly nothing, and we got some Parks and Rec projects that we're going to have to do in the next year just to get back to where we were, like the pavilion at the canal, for example. I think the reserve officers, I think that was all good, but Chief, do we have money to pay the reserve officers in our budget?
No, sir, our budget was dedicated $10,000 for that.
Okay, so we're talking $7,800 plus the fees from the police impact. I don't want to take your impact fees. That's why how we pay for things we don't know is happening, like get some more mace and tasers and stuff.
Yes.
I don't like that. I like the idea of an officer being out there, but there is a statute that talks about patrols, code patrols that says you shouldn't use uniform officers. We went through that not long ago.
That is correct.
So I guess non-uniformed officer would be okay, but not in uniform. So it kind of, in my book, it kind of narrows it down to using the folks we're already paying to be on duty, which would be Mark and his folks. We're paying them all to be on duty, and other employees, and they could go at least 2 times a day. The four-wheeler is located right there where their office is, where they work.
What did Mark think about that?
Doesn't make a difference to me.
But we only have about, 20 calls a month, emergency calls, medical.
I think our average is 27 to 30. It'll increase a little bit over season, but.
And we do have we do contribute quite a bit of money to the ESU. It has a purpose, but we contribute a lot of money to it. It's never been full-time before this year.
Could we talk about the vehicle by which they would use on the beach? If we have an on-call ESU person, they most assuredly have to use their ESU vehicle for response time purposes. If they're on the four-wheeler and they're 3 blocks away from the nearest ingress egress area, then that takes an enormous amount of time to find that, fight through the crowds on July 4th, find where your vehicle was parked, and then get in it and go. If I'm not mistaken, our new red ESU vehicle already is beefed up underneath with all kinds of coatings and everything. We have our protocol in that when a vehicle touches the sand, it is washed when it gets back from the beach.
My question is, we can't hardly get a four-wheeler down the beach, how are we gonna get a pickup truck down the beach?
And the issue is even bigger than that. When you go in at the Gulf County Line access point, there's not another access point until Gulf Foods, unless you want to go up the 8th Street Canal. And I don't know that the SUV is going to go across the 8th Street Canal.
Depends what time of year it is, how the canal is flowing. Some days yes, some days no.
So I had a couple of days, I didn't want to drive a ATV across the most shallow part to get out of there. It's,
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Just depends on the water and all that stuff.
So what do you do then?
Turn around, go back down to the county line.
That's correct. And if you do it the other way, you can't get past the 8th. There's a lot of entrances on the west side.
Correct.
None of them too terribly difficult. But if you get a call, the flaw of this plan is if you're on the east side and you get a call, there is no good opportunity unless you literally do what we're not supposed to do and just take the four-wheeler up the dune.
I was just going to say, my stupid question would be, are we able to put in
another beach drive over towards 6th Street? Is that possible? How do we go about doing that?
DEP,
Difficult?
DOT, DEP, EPA.
Federal government problems.
I don't know, we may have a permit for that.
We do not have a permit for that, because we looked into that, 2 years ago.
The one access per block in our permit.
We spoke with DEP and they said absolutely not. We had to go, they didn't say, no, you absolutely cannot do it, but you gotta go through the whole process to get the permits to do it. We looked at it 2 years ago, because something happened, I don't remember what it was, but for some reason or another, we needed to get off the beach quicker than what we were actually able to do, so that's when we started looking to do it. But I will look into that for sure again tomorrow. I'll be more than happy to give you guys an answer.
So even if ESU used their official vehicle, if they went into Gulf County entrance, worked up to 8th Street, and let's say it's 7th Street, they got a call, they'd still have to go all the way back to 8th Street. So,
Now,
and if they had the four-wheel and they parked their vehicle, would be cumbersome, believe me. They'd have to park their vehicle there and switch vehicles when they got out. So it would take,
You still have to go back.
You still have to go back.
oh, that's what I'm
Doesn't go
saying,
out.
you still have to go back either way. And so it's an additional 5 minutes getting out of one vehicle.
And where you're gonna place the four-wheel vehicle. Because if it's either trailer
True.
or if it's rented down there, you have to get back to your
True.
emergency vehicle.
Right.
And that's probably gonna be back at the station.
you know, guarantee you park on the wrong end. Guarantee.
Oh, yeah.
I
Absolutely.
did
Always
that.
Yep.
And I had to just traverse the entire beach to get back to where I had the trailer. Well, maybe that's still not the solution.
You know, our only solution may be actually to, unfortunately, number one. I said, okay, sorry. Our only solution may be to go with number one, or A, and then when it comes to budget time, whichever accounts we pull that money, make sure we put in next year's budget sufficient amount to replace it as part of funding this ordinance for next year.
All right,
In other words, borrow.
see, the beach, bring back the beach patrol. If we could do that for 7,800 and use CDC's money, and they gave us 11,800, and they would pay us as we use it, so we would not have to use all of their money. And then do B, whereas pick up at 6 o'clock in the morning by our different departments. So we could still do the beach patrol, but not ESU. Cost us 7,800 for 5 months. And then have our departments pick up at 6.
And that's based upon the reserve doing that. That was the calculation we came up with earlier today to do that.
It's not
What
just
if,
that.
okay, but what if we not hired,
Like 40,000?
Sorry?
Is it like 40,000 total?
No, sir.
20,000 total?
Well, it's only based upon, Adrian, how long do we base that upon? How many months? 2 months? 4 months? 4 months. It's based upon 4 months.
so what would it cost us to hire somebody? And I know we have a difficult time hiring people. But what would it cost us to hire somebody to be beach patrol, forget the word patrol, because it wouldn't be an officer, beach ambassador, or whatever we want to call it, for these 4 months? If we found somebody to do it in the morning and a part-time guy to do it, or a girl, to do it in the afternoon, and then have pickup at 6 in the morning.
That is correct, and something that we also spoke about as a public safety entity, not necessarily law enforcement, as a beach ambassador, beach patrol, however we want it to be titled, with what ESU has and my reserve officers. Between the two of us, if the money was there, we could cover that.
You wouldn't have to hire anybody
Wouldn't have to hire.
strictly for that.
You've
I like
already got
that
trained
idea.
Personnel, you've already got trained personnel.
Okay.
In the event there's an emergency. And again, it's gonna be the department heads
discretion who's gonna be down there, because we don't want to go down there. But not the idea of going down to the community as police officers, you know, because this is a beach tourist industry here. We do want people to come back. So we're not going down with the concept that we're down there to enforce it. We want everybody safe. We want the right people to go home. You know, if you're a bad person, then we can get a road officer to come down and enforce what needs to be enforced. But you've got somebody designated already there with a public safety background. So that's beneficial to everybody. Between our two departments.
You could have that covered.
Yes, ma'am.
And we could use the money from CDC, and they would not, if, depending on the cost, you know, they gave us 11.8, we probably wouldn't have to use all that.
Probably would.
Or, but if we did, I mean,
So I really like the idea of the 1099, but it's, like I said, it's probably not practical for immediate implementation. I've talked to 3 or 4 different families in town that are interested in providing a bid to the city.
I think that's an excellent idea if we start looking at it in December or January for the next busy season.
Back to option B. Sorry, I was wandering around. I didn't want to say it out loud. I was crazy. But I was thinking of the Paradise Shores walkover at 7th Street. It's already a walkover, drive over. They talked recently about wanting to get rid of it. Could we put another drive over there? And then you'd have access on both sides from Toucan all the way to the county line. You would not have to cross that canal. That would be right behind Toucan.
7th Street.
It's actually at 8th Street.
Yeah, it's at 8th Street. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
at 8th
it's a
Street.
walkover now.
It's a private walkover, but it would be, I know, we don't know if we can do it, but it could be possibly made into a drive point if we took it.
Oh, anything could be possibly made to a drive point.
Well, probably more
Like I
likely
told
than
you, let me look into it tomorrow.
Yes.
Let's try to find an answer.
Maybe we could get by with it for 3 or 4 months.
Well, it's not that.
Well, I'm thinking long-term.
We have another workshop in a week. Are we gonna have more answers than we have questions?
I'd surely like to think so, but, you know, we'll have answers to the questions that were asked tonight.
So far, all we've done is use whoever's available to go down there. Nobody's received any extra pay. It's just the people that have been working, that are city employees that have gone down there to try to enforce this ordinance. And we've done a good job so far because there are no infractions out there when we got through with money.
Except if we go with C,
If I may.
if we use that part of C or tweak C and then pick up at 6 in the morning.
As much as and I'm biased in this because, you know, I hate to see my guys being run every which way from Sunday. In my opinion, for the time being, until we can figure out in the next budget cycle, it's just easier for us to, we'll have a department come in at 6 o'clock, leave at 2:30. Once their 8-hour day is up, it's up. Go home unless there's an emergency. Right now, and on the weekends, we'll have 2 people, extra people come in to pick up the beach at 6 o'clock as well. Right now, I believe that's probably going to be the most fiscally sound plan that we have. Because the guys are already here. As long as nothing major happens, such as 2 10-inch water breaks, we can send everybody home after 8 hours.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The people that you're going to be sending out there to deal with the public, is there going to be some kind of a training or something that, you know, teaches these people how they're supposed to do that? I just kind of see a problem with randomly taking people from different jobs and sending them, you know, out because obviously they'll be talking with people and addressing people, and I just see some problems if there isn't some kind of structural or training or something with, do you know what I'm saying? And
You're saying saying that you're saying that I've been too gruff out there on the folks on the beach, is that what you're saying? Actually, I explained to a couple of them, I'm the only friend you got. The Poco down here, they'll give you a ticket. But it's worked out real well. I haven't had any blowback from anybody on the beach. And what I've been doing is stopping by every tent that's out there and say, you know, we have a legal place ordinance now. You have to take it with you at the end of the day when you leave, okay? And everybody's saying, fine, you know. And we're not having a lot of that problem.
My concern isn't you, quite honestly.
I'm sorry?
My concern wouldn't be you, but.
I understand. Sure, we're gonna have to have some sort of.
If I may.
But ESU and police certainly know how to talk to the public.
Right.
Their job would be to simply go out and pick up whatever it is that's out there. If somebody has a question, as I instruct all my guys to do, call 648-5700. That is the only answer they give.
But the pickup part, I think, is they don't have to talk to the public.
I agree.
They're out there to do a job, and it's between 7P and 7/8, and nobody else is too much out there. But the other part of it is a very important part. Yes, ma'am.
I think what Tina's saying, and I agree with her 100%, is not busy right now. But come June and July, and you got the wrong person talking to these people, you need to remove your tents, you'll have a lot of trouble. Also, so I know in the previous meeting, we talked about how we didn't want all the phone calls going to City Hall, right? So now, if we do this, where will the phone calls go?
City Hall.
Well, enforcement issues go to the on-call officer.
But on weekends, who would you call?
The on-call officer.
Ghostbusters. Would that number be somewhere?
It's a published number, but yeah, sure. Not all the city staff knows what that number is.
I mean, do you understand the question, like, is it gonna be on the tags, is it?
You're wondering about the public. Will the public know
Yeah. We got this
who to
outnumbered
call
now,
when their
man.
things are missing?
Trust me,
Yeah.
when there's a fire on the beach on the weekend, nobody has a problem finding it. They always call, and usually have 10 calls before we get there, and it can be 3 minutes after it's
Is
there.
that normally residents?
Anybody.
We did not publish that number on the card we're going to use that will be here this week. That's the answer to your question. But the answer to, if there's an enforcement issue, something comes up. But, you know, some of these things need pieces put together, like education. I still think education is the key. Prevention is the key, not the tail end of this thing. We don't have to pick anything up if people know they're not supposed to do it and don't do it. And yes, I realize that's a pie in the sky idea, Philip, but it's the best we could do to start with. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to be doing a detailed accounting of every man hour we spend out there doing this job. Every tip fee, every employee payment, every hour that's spent out there. We're going to detail this thing so that the fall budget cycle will know exactly how much money we've got to have to enforce this order.
So where are we?
We're kind of where we started.
I think I'm nearly more confused now
Gone
than
in
I
a
was
circle.
before.
I think where we left it is we'll keep on as we have been doing. Do it as staff gets time and appointed and that sort of thing. Next week, we'll hope to have some of the answers that you've got questions today.
Especially like access points and.
Access
do we have to do
points and
permits
who's.
And all that kind of
Exactly.
stuff.
Right.
Okay, so status quo right now. Maintain what we're doing.
Right.
And, okay. And where are we with Hector? Are we doing a hearing? Are we going to talk about it next week? What are we doing?
Amendment.
Hmm?
Amending the ordinances.
Yeah, I think the process needs to get started.
Yeah, right. I don't think we, yeah.
I mean,
But the question is the question that I put on the worksheet. Does he get to continue to work as he does now? Or do we require him to take some of the stuff off the beach now? Or do we require him to take all of the stuff off the beach now?
I think we have to require him to take some off. I think he's going to have to work with us because we do need more than probably what he is wanting to take off. As we're going to need him work with us as we start looking at this ordinance to see not only for he, but any other vendors that will be involved with this ordinance down the line, that we're fair to everyone. But I think fairness to our city, fairness to all citizens, he is going to have to remove. I don't know the materials out there as much as you may, since you walk the beach. So I can't specifically say which has to go. But I think the chairs probably, it sounded like, are a major obstacle to me.
They are a major obstacle. Hector, do you would like to make a comment?
Yeah, I got a comment.
Please.
You guys want me to remove the chairs off the beach, okay? What I'm gonna do now, when he calls and he need help, I'm gonna turn my head the other way because you guys don't allow me to keep my chairs there. I've been there for 17 years, never have an issue. You guys wrote this ordinance, change it from the one in Panama. We're in Bay County. I was thinking the same ordinance that's in Panama was gonna be here. That's why I was not worried about it. You guys change it.
We
did not change anything.
Why can't I use the same one it was in Panama? They work perfect. Why they have to just write one up?
You
Why
have
can't
to
I use
ask
the
them.
one from Bay County here?
I hear what you're saying, but I think you have to ask the people who wrote the ordinance up.
I know exactly who wrote it up,
And
and they
so-
want me to be out of here. That was the whole reason they
Well-
wrote it up.
And we are trying to work with you because we are offering to have a hearing, workshop, whatever you want to call it. And I would hope that you can work with us in the meantime. Is it an inconvenience for you?
You know how
Sure.
hard it be to
Yeah.
move the chair?
Sure, I remember you hauled them back and forth for years. I remember that. And so I understand that it would be a pain in the butt.
It'd be real hard to do it.
Right.
And go-
But I hope you can work with us too, because we are wanting to help you by having this hearing. Do we have to have a hearing? No, but we want to help you to have a hearing. And what aggravates me is people are blaming the council for the way it was written. We didn't write it.
Why you guys don't use the one in Panama? They work perfect.
We didn't write it.
We
They
don't
wrote it.
have that option.
They wrote it.
Because
The group wrote it. I didn't vote for it either. I voted no.
They gotta
But-
copy it. It's like the one in Panama.
Well-
We're in Bay County.
But that was their choice.
We are a
So-
separate city. We've had this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own ordinance. It's not theirs. We didn't write it. We didn't use it. And obviously, the group that wrote it didn't use it.
Yeah.
So the Panama ordinance is completely irrelevant to what we're doing.
Yeah, and whoever wrote it, they don't think about how much I've done for the city. You guys, I don't see nobody over there cleaning the beach. The only people I see when there's a rescue, him or them, to come over there helping. Many times I'll be going home and they call me, somebody's missing, I have to turn around and come back. Been working 10 hours a day. And I don't hesitate, I do it. Now, I don't feel I need to. Because you guys pretty much telling me, get your stuff off the beach. You know?
hopefully, by the time we start getting busy, we can have all this done and straightened out. I, for one, don't think you should remove everything off the beach. But right now, it's not the Jerry Wallace ordinance.
I understand that.
I mean, our hands are tied, we can't do anything. Now, I didn't vote for it either. So what? I like the idea of the ordinance in Panama City.
It worked perfect over
Yeah.
there.
But that's not what we're dealing with now. So what we've got to do is we've got to have some public hearings, we've got to get the ball rolling and try to get this thing amended. Can't do without it. I mean, can't say, oh, we're not going to do this anymore. Just get it amended to where it works for the people that are already here and have been here for years.
I was real happy when it passed. I was not thinking about my business. It was going to be an issue. I was happy because we can remove the stuff from the beach that people live there. I was tired of having broken chairs there, pick them up and throw them away. I was real happy until he came and talked to me.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. And I got to remove everything so I won't have a license. That's what he says.
Yeah. It's not him, it's the ordinance.
Oh, it was him.
Well,
Well, he was the messenger, Hector. He didn't write the ordinance. This table did not write the ordinance. And I don't think any of us here probably would like to see, or really, if it was our wish, would be able to say, hey, you got to move it on. But the problem is, we also have to respect the ordinance as much as we ask our citizens to. It's our responsibility to respect it, and unfortunately, you're in between the forces right now. And I'll tell you, I can't say that go on like you have been as sitting up here, because soon as I do that, then all my other citizens can ask for the same thing. I'm here, whether I like it or not, to ask our citizens to follow that ordinance and listen to our citizens at the same time, you and any of the other citizens that we will have up there and who will have ideas of what needs to be changed, so we can make that ordinance better for our city. We didn't write it. We didn't get a chance to put our words, our thoughts into it. And actually, the ordinance was written by a relatively small group of people. There were a lot of people that signed the petition. There were a lot of people that voted for it. But they didn't have the input of the citizens as we want to have to make the proper changes and make it a better ordinance for our city.
Hector, I've got to make one comment. When this passed on the 1st of March, I as mayor could have said, code enforcer, go down there and tell Hector to get all his stuff off the beach every night at 7 o'clock. But I actually came to you to talk to you about this. And how you turn that around, I really don't get it, man. I really don't. Personal, me and you, and I'll say it right here, but I don't really get it. I came down here to talk to you about this.
I've been doing the same thing for 17 years. I had no problems.
I've been in this city since 1991. I haven't had any problem either, but this ordinance is new.
Yeah.
It's new.
It's new. Well, the people that wrote it, why they don't go down there and help? When you guys got somebody drowning, a rescue, they can go out there and do it.
I appreciate everything you've ever done on rescue, but
I don't see you down there doing that. I don't see nobody here doing that. I see him and the fire department. That's it. That's the only one. And I'm the one that go do the rescue.
Public safety tries our best to do that, but we do not advertise rescue or lifeguards because it is a liability that we cannot afford in this city.
I deal with that every day.
I understand. It's a great thing you do. It's a humanitarian thing you do, but it's not something that we advertise because we cannot afford it.
And we do appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
People don't.
Yes, sir, please.
It sounds like there's some confusion on what needs to be removed. I request an opportunity to meet, go out on the beach with you so that we can discuss the specific items that are out there. I think that would help clarify the situation.
I'll be happy to go.
Yeah, he can go, but we can't.
Only one.
Not collectively, I understand.
Only one.
I understand that.
Yeah, the sunshine law.
Yeah, the
Right.
comment that you weren't sure what was there.
No, it's
I
true.
think we, to make an informed decision to help craft a resolution to help make the ordinance better, any of those things, obviously,
I
we
agree.
need to see what is going on.
Sure.
So, I welcome that opportunity to be able to do that.
So when can we have this hearing or workshop? What's our, if we're going to do that?
When can we start?
Right, when can it start?
You'd want to give the public as much advance notice as possible to get the word out.
Okay,
So you wouldn't want to do it like within a week.
all right.
You'd want to wait at least 2 or 3 weeks just to get time to.
How about 2
Facebook
weeks?
to work.
2 weeks. Can we legally do it in 2 weeks?
How much decision are you making at your hearing?
Have no
Hearing
idea.
First one, it's just for public comment about the order. Okay,
What'd you say?
just 1 second. What's the purpose of the hearing?
To gather information, we have to get input from our businesses like Hector, we have to get input from our citizens, and we have to get, as far as I'm concerned, I agree with you, we need input from those that wrote this ordinance so we can understand where they were going, and then we can start crafting where we may think we need to go.
How about a town hall, style meeting?
That's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
And there's no decision has to be made. The council will take the information from that meeting into the
Correct.
next workshop
Mhm.
and consider whether we'll make any changes to it. Correct?
That would be fine. I'm in agreement.
That's what we're gonna do.
So
Look at
Melanie,
look at the minimum requirements that we've gotta have for a public hearing
for work, town hall meeting.
and proper publicity.
I think the off week would be probably the soonest that we have where we don't have any meetings.
The third.
18th of April.
So
Nope,
meeting
can't have
next,
that day.
Election day.
That's the soonest we can have it?
You could have it tomorrow. I mean, it doesn't matter when you're gonna have it. It's a town hall meeting. There's gonna be nothing regulating a town hall meeting.
we do need though, I think, at least,
But then you're gonna
2
go through the public
weeks
hearing
to really
process,
get-
once you have a draft, which is
Yes.
gonna take 2 public hearings over a month apart, yes.
we're going to be into the season before we can make changes, the unfortunate situation.
A
is.
benevolent dictatorship could handle this real quick.
Yeah, but Florida law is Florida law, so.
I know, my wife told me to quit saying that. The mayor just told me to quit saying that.
You can't say that. Yes, ma'am.
If I was a Democrat, I would tell them.
My name is Mary Lee Rollerson, and I was one of the people that was on the committee that wrote this ordinance. We wrote it with the advice and help of an attorney, and she advised us, and she's worked for the state of Florida for many years, and she advised us to write it as simply and as straightforward as possible, and then to allow the city, because that will allow the city council, after they see how it works, to amend it in the ways that make it work for our city. So we didn't follow the one in Panama City because we're not Panama City. But we felt strongly about leave no trace and that it needed to be implemented, but we felt like it needed to be implemented in the way that works best for Mexico Beach. So that's why the ordinance is very straightforward and very simple. But we did have an attorney, and I'm sorry that Hector's not here. It was not directed at anyone, and I want to make that very clear. We did not direct this ordinance or write this ordinance to be specifically directed toward any one individual at all. It was just a matter of cleaning up the beach, and we felt strongly about that. So.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the opportunity. I work as a boat captain for Hector, mostly part-time, more than anything. And I think his point was, when he was talking about police officers and the emergency services, as boat captains, all of us are trained in CPR. Myself, I will come and save you, every one of you, at any given time. So all I think Hector would really like for y'all to do is consider him not as a way of saying, well, we're going to do this for you because we're not hired. You know, you're not hiring us to do this, but we are here for every one of you, every one of us, boat captains. So, I mean, I know it's tough, and you have to have these ordinances, and it's unfortunate the ordinance was wrote like it was because Hector did not understand it. He's not very good with that. He's just a guy that likes to get after it. He didn't understand it. So now, like you said, it's law, it's wrote, it's done. I think what he would really like is to look at, we as a company at Crazy Wave Runner, we care about Mexico Beach. I love this place. I don't live here, I live in Panama, but I love this place. And we have a lot of great people here. The El Governor is one of the #1 places people love to come to. Granted, yes, we are in the way. There's no doubt about that. We know that. And that's one of the reasons why we like to assist the police department, FWC, and the Coast Guard, and we are in compliance with all of those people, and more than willing at any given time, like Hector said, we will turn around, we'll stop what we're doing, we'll take that chute out of the air, and we will go help people. Mexico Beach does not have to pay for that. We will gladly do that at a moment's notice. This man right here can call us at any time. They can call us on the radio, Coast Guard, anybody. It's just something that Hector is going to give back and has done. So when you think about trying to rewrite that, because I understand how you have to do it. That's just the way it is. It's government. So instead, because he's a little excitable, so you have to kind of understand. He's kind of upset because those chairs are heavy. Right now, you guys want them off the beach. But, if there was a way that you can consider how to write that as a guy who contributes to Mexico Beach, he contributes to enforcement. It's maybe just a little bit of a consideration that when the people voted this in, they didn't think that, they didn't know that. These guys know it. Everyone knows it because we have help. But those people didn't. So maybe you guys can maybe put that together, and Hector is more than willing to work and do what's right. It's just a very tough thing right now to pick up all those chairs every night, get them off the beach, and he talked to me today about helping the city clean the beach and taking his own money, his own time. He talked to me today about buying a tractor, $57,000 to help you all clean the beach. He asked me that today. I go, well, maybe you should, calm your head down, come in here and talk to y'all. Because he's willing to do what he has to do because he's been here for so long. The people at the old governor, the owners are sitting right there. They love him. He's been here for a long time. So I'm just saying, from the captain's side, I love our tourists. I'm going to save every one of them I can if I have to. Hope I don't. And one other thing that I can say that we do, that the city does not have to do, we still enforce the Coast Guard rules about speed limits on the beach. Drinking, glass on the beach. We bust them all the time. We do it all the time. The people who voted that in did not think about what this beach service was doing at the time. So I'm just saying, in a better way than Hector, my buddy, but I thought I'd need to come to you guys and let you know that we really do care, and I'm sure we'll do everything we can to make it better because this place is great, and we're going to keep making it better because it's all part of the deal. So it's just harder to make it understand. I think a lot of people don't understand the beach. Our beach business is an asset to the beach that you don't have to pay for. We're here for you at any time. That's it. Period. I hope I made an impact somehow, but I had to say something. And I appreciate your time. Thanks, y'all.
Watch your head.
Just you let Hector know that he's not the only one that didn't understand the ordinance. Lots of people did.
Yes, ma'am. I think the biggest problem we have, and I just told him right there, I said, you know what, you said it, you were caught in the middle, and Hector's biggest problem that he made was he wasn't paying attention because he is such a very busy guy. 3 businesses, really, I don't make an excuse for him, but he needed to be paying attention when that happened, so we could make these amendment as well. I guess what I'm going to call. I'm not a politician, but I'm just saying. I would ask you guys to say, not give it leniency and say, like Bill said, I don't want to say, well, Hector can stay and this guy can't, because you can't. It's hard to do that.
I don't think what we want to look at is to say one can and can't.
Yeah.
We need to put something in that's, you want to call it friendly, however you want to, state it, but that's acceptable to all of our businesses that may have concessions on the beach, whether it would be Hector now or someone in the future. As he is caught in the middle of where we are,
Right.
we also are caught in the middle because we didn't have a say on this ordinance, and yet we are directed to make sure it's taken care of properly.
Well, I like your idea about doing something now because, we're getting ready to get busy. And You know, Hector doesn't want to be sitting here fighting with y'all when we could probably come to some kind of an agreement. I don't know how that politically works.
I think the mayor has volunteered to meet, I guess, with Hector and the lawyer to sit down and see what could be done, but we still, there are things that he's not going to like, and I'm sorry, and maybe we can, reverse whatever or do whatever, but it's got to be done accordance.
It would help tremendously, but I just wanted to say those things because there's a lot of things, when you were talking about the budgets, about paying, because being an Panama City employee, I understand budget. Okay, when the commissioner sits there and shakes his budget book at you, who's going to pay for this and who's going to do this? Well, that's what I'm trying to say. We're bringing something to you, and we don't mind doing it, and it doesn't cost you anything.
But have you noticed you do make a profit?
Well, yes. That's business. You got it. We do this because we like it. And I love.
It's a good business.
It's a great deal, and it brings people here, and we have a great time.
All of it. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all's time.
Anyone else, please? Yes, ma'am.
So,
I'm just curious.
that's right.
I've been here 17 years as well. And I remember multiple times that I have stopped my car on Highway 98 while Hector pulled everything off the beach on the cart every night and blocked traffic to do so. So I'm curious to know if he used to be able to do it. Why is it a problem now?
I think I have the answer.
Hello, I said the same thing.
I think I have the answer. He has more stuff now than he's ever had before.
Well, isn't that sort of like people bringing their entire house down to the beach and leaving it?
Yeah, that's not like that. But look,
You know?
we can all have an open mind. As I started this conversation nearly a month ago, we can have an open mind for people who are open-minded to work with you. But and he was invited to provide a written, and he was invited to give a verbal alternative or a compromise or a plan of action in any way by not only myself but also the city administrator, that he elected not to do that. And he's not being very open-minded. I don't know why he doesn't understand the difference between Panama City and Mexico Beach. But we have an ordinance that was written strictly to accommodate Hector. Ordinance 581.
I remember that.
It's on the books.
I remember that.
He's the only business that he even applies to. So it was written for him. So we'll have to go from there.
So if we have social media is wonderful. So if we put on social media that we're having a town hall meeting in 8 days, I'll guarantee you that this room will be full.
I guarantee you would be too.
And so we have a meeting next Tuesday, correct? So depending on who's available here on the council, and if Hector's available, and maybe we could have it after that so that we could remind the people next Tuesday, we're having a meeting Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and get this ball rolling, because if we wait 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks for a meeting, then we go for another 2 weeks, I just assume if we're going to move on it, to have a town hall, let's do it as quick as we can. Social media is wonderful. We have all found that out.
Well, I think you have to wait a couple of weeks. Somewhere it's in the books. You're having a town hall meeting, you have to give the public time.
So what's the,
I mean, okay with me if we had it tomorrow night, but that's not gonna work.
what's the earliest we can have it? I hear a week, and then I hear tomorrow, and then I hear 2 weeks, so.
For something like this, I'm not aware of a hard and fast number of days we have to wait. It's just a matter of the courtesy to the public to give them time to get notified.
We have a 48-hour. Unless it's under unusual conditions, you have to give them at least 48 hours.
That's all?
It's a town hall meeting. It's not a workshop, it's not a council meeting, it is a town hall meeting.
It's a fact finding.
So is it a public hearing to?
No,
It's not a public hearing.
Not the same thing. But you can still get the same, you can still accomplish the same thing.
But to change the ordinance, we're gonna have to have a public hearing. And we're gonna have to have a second meeting.
Why?
Well, you just have to, that's what it says.
First reading, second reading, and ordinance.
Yeah, but you don't have to have a public hearing. to
Your
change
first
the
reading
ordinance.
is your public hearing, your second reading is your second.
Okay, semantics, okay.
Right.
But that can be done on a regular meeting night.
Sure.
Yeah.
You are
Okay.
gathering at a public hall meeting, and then you propose.
Then go
the
back
first
and write
reading.
it, and then, yeah.
Okay. Oh, you lost me, sorry. Anything else?
Well, let's pick a date.
I thought he's what he's working on.
I'm working on it the other day.
Go pick a date
Nobody
tomorrow.
was winning.
Go. Don't the mayor get together with them and pick a date tomorrow? You know?
Fine.
What does your calendar look like for Monday?
P&Z Monday.
I'd like to have the information meeting before the workshop.
But being there isn't a requirement for a town hall meeting, for how long notice we need, I think we need to have some time to let the public know that we're going to be meeting.
I agree.
People from out of town will undoubtedly come to this meeting.
Correct.
Because the 40% have called me this week. My calendar's getting pretty full, so you want to do it. I mean, you can do it.
Well, what,
Pick the day and the day.
no. What do we want?
What day of the week do you want? We'll start there.
We can't have it Monday because of planning and zoning.
Next Monday, any other Monday. yeah.
Right, but we can't have it next Monday because of planning and zoning.
Nor could we have it the 10th, the next Monday, because that's the mayoral forum.
Okay, that's
So
right.
what are you talking about, next week?
And I can't have it on the 5th.
I think next week's is too fast to get public notification out, but that's just me.
Okay,
I personally agree.
all right. So,
About, see where we're at now. We're up to through the 10th.
11th is our meeting.
Wednesday the 12th.
that's fine, I won't be here, but that's okay.
I can wait.
I'm okay.
Wednesday the 19th.
I won't be here either.
What time, 6? 4?
6. Wednesday, the 19th at 6. That eliminates a lot of conflicts.
Wednesday's wide open, so anything works.
All right, that'll give everybody plenty of
You're
time
gonna
to
be here,
come.
the 19th?
Yeah, I'll be here.
It is on the calendar.
Okay.
April 19th.
April the 19th, Wednesday, April 19th at 6 o'clock, town hall meeting about leave no trace and possible amendments.
You said April the 19th?
April the 19th.
Okay, we're having a town hall meeting as opposed to a public hearing?
Correct.
Yes.
Why?
If you're having a public hearing, what are we proposing or changing? In writing, what am I presenting to them to argue against? Are we fact-finding, or are we presenting amendments?
Fact finding. We
If it's a
can't
public
write
hearing,
it.
I
So
need to
the
have it
public
written.
hearing, we have to present a program.
Correct. You need to have your changes there.
That's why I was in private business.
I know, but at a town hall meeting, everybody wants to have an opportunity to speak.
Okay,
And there's no-
okay.
There's no agenda, there's no anything, it's just
Just like we did with garbage.
bring the popo. All right,
Okay.
anything else? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Did I hear whoa?
Nothing else on the
Not so fast.
We did miscellaneous first. You lost out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you look at the screen, that is a schematic of channel markers. They are timber. There's light on the top. It shows you how deep it goes and that sort of thing. the reason I'm bringing this to you tonight is that we need to have in our meeting next week, we need to get this approved. Even though it's not a true voting meeting, I guess to do it right, we need to call a special meeting beforehand. We need to get this done next week so that we can get the order in quick enough to get this done expeditiously to get the canal done.
This is the Coast Guard one, with 4 poles.
Correct.
Option cheapest.
Weren't they going to be coated at the bottom rather than all timber? Didn't we talk about that?
These do have a UV protective sleeve or wrap around them.
Okay, because that's what we talked about.
And if you look at the screen, the amount of the change orders for $72,000, we do have the grant for $60,000, of which 30 is our responsibility. So we will get $30,000 for the Florida Boater Improvement Grant, I think, but the remainder would be our responsibility.
It's not $72,000 for these poles.
For the poles, lights, and day beacons, and the wrap, or the protective wrap.
Make sure we get a copy of the specifications on that. That sounds way too high.
They are to be embedded 25 feet deep at a depth, water depth of 7 to 8 feet, and they've got to be under 10 feet above the mean high water line. Once you get over 40 feet on your pile, your timber pile length, costs go way up. And
Talking nearly a 50-foot pole.
correct. The 25-foot embedment depth was set so that the pole itself would break before it would pop out of the ground. So it would take a pretty good force of nature to remove these piles.
Just the same, I'd like to see what each item costs. Still
Sure. Sure.
And the sleeve will cover what's the percentage of the pole that the sleeve will cover? The entire thing, or 75%, 60%, just underwater?
It really covers from just above the top of soil to
Okay.
down below it. And this protective wrap is really protecting against wood boring,
Right.
insect bugs, worms.
Okay, that's for next week.
Next item, Alert Bay. We kicked that off last week with the water breaks. We had a glitch at first because it didn't work the first time. When we had the first break, we worked with Bay County to get it all situated and everything. But to show you how popular it became in a hurry, when I sent the first notice out about the first break, it reached a total of 804 people. When people called the office, as many did on Thursday, we tried to get them to sign up for Alert Bay. That and other means allowed that when we did the second notice later on that day, we had 1,364. So just in that short amount of time, that many people signed up for that service.
That's great.
And I think that is testament that it's a pretty good system. You know, when you sign up for it, that doesn't mean you have to have the app on your phone, but if you go on the internet and sign up, you can have it call your home phone if you don't have a smartphone or something. So that works pretty slick. Another item is the chickens at Gulf Foods. There's a problem in that during the busy times of our holidays in the summer, Lance has a problem with his indoor chicken cooker, I don't know, rotisserie, whatever you call it, of keeping up with the demand. So he has proposed to have an outdoor grill, which would be on wheels, and it would have a roof over it to keep the weather and whatnot out. You don't want a bird flying overhead and dropping something on a chicken on a rotisserie. So the only problem we found is that we don't want people to think that it's a food trader. He's already talked to the county about the requirements for that, and they say it's okay as long as you don't sell it from the grill. Make sure that it's taken from the grill to the inside and prepared for packaging at that point. So he's also said that if there was a problem with people visually looking at this thing. He can even put it behind the fence on the east side of his business. So what do you all think at this point? Should we?
I'm very much in favor of him putting it on the inside of the fence and not in the parking lot.
Okay.
I agree with that.
And I have a problem with him saying they haven't kept up with the demand because he just installed it. So how does he know whether he keeps up with the demand or not? He just installed it.
I don't have any problem with it, putting it behind the fence. Go to it.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it behind the fence either.
All right. The last thing I have, I think it was more of a Philip thing, the sewer rehab. Is that something you want to talk about?
Sure.
Sewer rehab project. We had the company come out, they were gonna get ready to do the, repairs and stuff to the manholes. After a lot of talk with that company, we know that there's a problem with the manholes. We have issues. We have holes and we have I&I issues within the manholes. We believe that the problem isn't confined to that area. We believe the I&I issues are more widespread without the line and the system themselves. So after talking with the company who was originally going to come in and fix the few wet wells, they offered us the opportunity to come in and do a complete assessment of our entire system. Every single line, every single connection, every wet well, every manhole, the whole kit and caboodle for the same price that was originally bid on and accepted by. So I would, what I'm asking for tonight is guidance from the council. I believe this will give us a true assessment of what our issues are, because instead of just going around fixing a few manholes a year, maybe we need to focus somewhere else as opposed to, this wet well over here or that manhole over there. If we do this, I need from the council, what do I need from the council?
This project was already bid, so it's the scope is what you got to change.
Yeah, just changing the scope of work is what I need, or PO, I guess.
What did you find when you did smoke tests? We did a bunch of them.
Well, we found our normal, what we knew we would find, such as broken laterals around town. We only found a manhole that needed work very soon. Beyond that, we didn't find any manholes that were leaking. We didn't find any wet wells that were, letting smoke out. Now, what's under the ground, I couldn't tell you. This is just, the smoke testing is just for finding things like broken laterals, messed up manhole covers, things like that. But if you go back, what was it, 2 years ago when we did that sewer project on 22nd Street? When we ran the camera down that line, we had SIS, I believe it was, come out and run a camera down that line to figure out, try to get an idea of what the real issue was. Every single joint in that line was pouring water into the system. So this is what this would tell us, where the worst parts are, where we're getting the most water into the system, and we can focus in that area as opposed to bouncing around and fixing a few manholes here and there. We can still fix our wet wells and our manholes, but maybe we need to focus on this end of town more so than that end of town, you know what I'm saying?
This is over $50,000.
I think it was right at 50.
If we change the scope of work, I think we need to bid out that project.
If we change the scope of the work, I can almost 100% guarantee that it's going to cost us more.
For $50,000, I want to know if somebody else can do it cheaper.
We can do that.
That's my opinion. A diagnostic study for over $50,000 and it's not fixing anything.
It turns out to be 61 cents a linear foot.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What they're going to do is run cameras through the pipes.
Yes, sir. Provide us all the DVDs and all the information that they collect, obviously.
And the same company was doing another scope, was doing something else.
They're just repairing the manholes.
They were just repairing the manholes for $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
A different job.
Just repairing a few manholes.
So will they still do the repairing of the manholes plus this other?
No.
50? Okay.
It's either one or the other.
Okay.
Repair the few manholes that
we know have some issues. And it's like you said, the manholes that you've picked out, manholes that are around town, because they went and looked at several more. Yes, you do have issues within these areas. But we don't believe that that's where your real issue is. We believe that the I&I problem exists in the system itself, within the lines, within the connections of the joints.
Yeah.
I've already spoke with another company about this and trying to get them to give us a price for the same thing.
So you
I
fix
and
it.
I.
Yeah.
Intrusion.
Thank you.
Water's getting into the system.
Okay, I didn't know
We're
it.
paying to treat
Somebody's-
groundwater, essentially,
Right,
is what it is, not wastewater.
Right.
So we fix all the manholes. If you got leaks all along the line, you haven't done much. You've done something. But you don't know where we
How
stand.
much, right. And by the time you finish that project, you got to start the whole process of relining the manholes.
Well, I think you've got to do that. I mean, I think we've got to do what we've got to do to know where we stand. I mean.
You mean do
Well, we can-
Study
Yeah,
for $50,000.
I'm not opposed to that. Well, it is what it is. Otherwise, you're just guessing at what you're getting done. And if you've got lines, I'm a little bit familiar with that. I had that problem many years ago. And that we wound up many years ago running a camera down the line to really see where we were. That's the only way you can be sure of having a solid system. That's the only way. Unless you want to dig it up. That's the other way.
When does this contract that we have currently with this company, is there a time frame that it would end?
I think it was 90 days after commencement of work.
Have we started working on it?
If you consider them coming out to begin, once they got out here, once they showed up that day, they went out and looked at all the manholes. They bid on this project blind. I mean, they had all the information they needed, they just didn't physically see what was in the manholes. Once they popped the covers on the manholes, they said, hey, we don't think your problem's in here, we think your problem's out here.
Reason I ask that, can we go out for a bid for having the inspection done and then be able to take a look at the price of that bid for inspection and see whether we want to complete the existing contract for what we put it out for, or to use that money for a new contract either with them or someone else, because that's what they're saying, is that we'll give you a new contract to do this, if I understand it right, because the scope of work has changed so dramatically. The contract that we have out to them, unless we change the scope of work, just really won't.
It won't fly.
It doesn't fly well. I
One's
mean,
rehab,
it may
one's
be
diagnostic. That's
may
not
be
the same thing.
cheaper with them, I acknowledge, but
We can,
can't.
sure enough, go out for bid. I don't know how the other part of it handles or works out, but I would imagine, I have no idea, to be honest with you. But yes, we can go out for bid for the diagnostic part of the entire system.
If you think diagnostic is more important than rehabbing 5 manholes, then we need to stop where we're at and look at that.
I agree.
I have no problem with the diagnostic. I believe the same thing. I'm not going to dig up the sewer line over here on 22nd Street to see if it's rooted.
Right.
And I'd rather a diagnostic and a DVD and all that, but the price is a little bit.
Simple.
So we just bid it. But I think we need to do it.
I understand.
We have it budgeted for out of the sewer impact, do we not?
Out of the impact? I thought we budgeted it.
With the transfer from the.
Okay.
Yeah, we rounded up to 60,000 in case there was some incidental.
We amended that, that's right.
And I'd be happy if they're the lowest for them, put the bid in at that price, if that's really the lowest.
If it's the lowest, he can have the job. But I think that's a very significant change in the scope of work. One's rehab and one's diagnostic, that's not the same thing.
I agree. Bid it.
I got one more thing.
It's gonna cost money.
No, there's only one individual who calls me at least once a week to complain about pickleballers in the courts. I promised him, he doesn't like any of the answers that I give him, so I promised him that I would bring it up to the council tonight, and whatever the council said do, that's what I was gonna do. What he wants done is, well, what he wants done is just ban it all together and, you know, kick everybody out of the park and so on and so forth. At the very least, what he's asking for us to do is that pickleballers agree to the original sign that, I don't know who put out there, I don't know if it was the city or us, between the hours of, I want to say 8 and 11, and you'll leave it at that. What?
9 to 11.
Either way, like I explained to him, it's a park. It's there for anybody to use whenever they want to use it. The only time they can't use it is when the noise ordinance kicks in and you can't have the lights on and all that stuff. He doesn't like that answer. So like I said, I promised him that I would ask you guys tonight what your thoughts are.
What is he saying? Is he saying they're coming too early?
Too early, too late, too long, too loud?
They don't start at 9.
That's just too bad.
They do get there from time to time, you know, at 7.
Just a moment.
But the noise ordinance allows that. We don't have a time that our park opens. It's open to anybody that wants to use it whenever they want to use it.
Philip, I agree with you completely.
I
It's a
do
park.
also. It's a park.
It's a park, whether you're out there playing pickleball, or tennis, or basketball, you're gonna make noise, it's a park. And I'm behind you 100%.
I think the absolute worst case scenario, we can look at doing some sort of sound barrier between his house and the court.
No.
No.
Not now.
It's a park.
All right, Ms. Pickleball, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, you can tell him.
I'm not telling him.
No, I'm telling you. Code needs to go and smell his house
Honey.
and hear the cats.
Sit down. Sit down.
Am I right?
No, sit down.
See, my wife's at home.
Yes, ma'am.
Retaliation.
We
Please.
have called.
Sit down. I had a popo.
I've played pickleball before. I've had a little back injury, so I'm not playing right now. But the people that work and pay taxes here in Mexico Beach, that's the only time I can play.
That's right.
And I pay taxes just like whoever the complainant is, you know, and we don't get out there and hoop and holler like teenagers now. I know in the daytime I've kind of heard, been by City Hall and heard them. But you know, at night, we're not that loud. I mean, I have a neighbor who has a basketball goal facing the road. And sometimes I'll be sitting in my house reading a magazine and I'll be like, what's that noise? What's that noise? And it's the ball. I never have complained to them. They're out there playing basketball. You know, and that's not a city park. You know, can I ask one other question that's on Leave No Trace? So I can get clarified on it? Now, so I can tell visitors, okay? The city is going to enforce it all the way through all this changing.
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
talking.
It is an ordinance.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
will be.
Because I had a couple come in today at the Welcome Center,
Phil,
and I had to hear it, you know.
as far as the sound barrier,
If we can tweak
if
it.
he
fine.
wants to put one
But
up
right now, yeah.
himself
Yeah,
on his
okay.
property.
Just want to make sure.
At his cost, and it meets all of the city's regulations, tell him feel free.
Okay. I hate to throw it off on you guys like that, but every answer, it just wasn't
No.
sufficing with him. He just wasn't gonna hear it.
It's a park.
Alrighty. That's all I got, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, what about your copy of the mayor?
I have a coffee with the mayor on the 5th at the Fish House at 6 o'clock. Not a political meeting, an update on the city events. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.